time?
It is time for us to do what we have been doing, and that time is every day.
We'll know in a very short period of time, but it looks like it could be something that will be not good. Believe me, not good.
I see issue with that. And again, hey.
You're not going to be able to insult your way to the presidency. That's not going to happen.
I don't know who created Pokemon Go, but I'm trying to figure out how we get them to have Pokemon go to the polls.
I'm Ted Cruz, and my pronoun is kiss my ass.
So when you think about it, there is great significance to the passage of time in terms of what we need to do to lay these wires, what we need to do to create these jobs.
America is a nation that can be defined in a single word. I was going to put him...
Not good. Believe me, not good.
Hello, dissidents. Welcome, one and all, to a special Thursday noontime or midday edition of the Do Dissidents podcast. Keaton Weiss here with Russell Dobular, of course.
Hello.
Hello, everybody. Thanks for being here very much this afternoon. We hope this is a relatively fun-filled afternoon compared to the last show. We know the last show was a little heavy, so we put a light story at the top this time for you guys. We figure we owed you that much. We figure we owed you some good, lighthearted fun. What you got going on over there?
Good vibes. I'm trying to turn down the light. Oh. All right. Hang on. Just give me a second. So this is what happens when you're not in your space.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
Things don't work the way you're used to.
Yeah.
Okay.
Looks fine. You were a little washed out at the start.
Yeah, now I'm just trying to get it to stand.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. There we go. I gotta adjust my mic. There.
Boom.
All right.
All right.
Perfect. All right. Well, Russ still in Buffalo. We got a nice crowd filing in here to start things off. 470 strong in the YouTube chat. 295 over on Rumble. Please smash that like button. Let's work the algorithm here on the early show. Smash that subscribe button. Smash that follow button over on Rumble. Russ, apparently you promised something that you did not deliver on that we're going to have to do on Sunday. I don't even remember you promising it.
I mean, I'm on track to get elected president at this rate.
Yeah, exactly. Promises made, promises kept.
In case the filmmakers are watching, because I told them I was going to do it at noon, I'm just going to say, if you only see one film this year, make that film The Pee Pee Poo Poo Man.
There you go.
I saw it the other night. They're touring it around to independent theaters. I did a little interview with the director, so I will save it for Sunday. We were just too slammed today for me to put together my interview montage. One of the things I love about places like this, although I got to say, I've never been in a place quite like Buffalo where these kinds of old movie palaces have been restored. Like it's, this largely abandoned Rust Belt city. Beautiful, perfectly restored 1920 movie theater. Just absolutely beautiful, beautiful theater that this was playing in. And I will say on Sunday, I'll say more about it. This movie is like a throwback to cult films of the 70s and 80s, where you could tell the filmmakers were having a ball and they just didn't give a fuck and they just went for it. I have not laughed that much in a movie in quite a long time.
There you go. So you promised it to the director, not to the audience.
No. The audience doesn't know. But to the director, I say, yeah, man, Thursday I'll show the interview. But yeah, didn't get around to it. But Sunday, we'll do it Sunday. I'll put it together. I'll show you guys some pictures of this theater. Old piano in there. I don't know if it's original to the theater. It looks like it might be. Like, just so cool. This is the kind of thing. All right, you live in a place like New York City. That shit just doesn't exist. Part of why Buffalo is so architecturally gorgeous is because it was at its heyday in the Gilded Age and the turn of the century. And then with the loss of the Erie Canal traffic, it started to decline before the developers came in and tore everything down and ruined it. So
Right.
everything's still there. They just never tore down all these Victorian Gothic houses to put up ugly high rises.
Right.
Like you'll see a couple of those here and there, but not really. But that's also why you'd have a 1920 movie theater like that.
Right.
They didn't tear it down to put in a Best Buy.
Right. Exactly. It doesn't get gentrified as quickly or as thoroughly.
There's. I mean, who are they going to gentrify it for? Okay,
Right.
this is another very strange thing about Buffalo. I just cannot figure it out economically. Buffalo, in a lot of ways, is the best of both worlds. They have a lot of the amenities that come with gentrification, like good food and a wide variety, without gentrification. It's weird.
Right.
It's very weird. Like you don't have those people. Like those people, but
Well, that's the way Austin used to be before those people moved in.
right.
Yeah, those people actually showed up.
Interesting. So
Yeah.
that's when Austin was weird.
Yeah, back when Austin was weird, it was like that. There was a lot of culture, a lot of great food, a lot of great music, but extremely inexpensive, like mind-bogglingly inexpensive. And this was not long ago. It was like 15 years ago. This was like the late aughts, you know. All right, why don't we move? Why don't we get going? So, like I said, I promised the audience. I figure after the last show, which was pretty heavy, we owed you guys a light one to start things off today.
Oh, we're gonna start with that.
Yeah. I texted
All
you,
right.
Elder. Yeah, that's it.
Okay, this is what America was saying this past week. Us.
Yeah.
We literally just want healthcare. America, best I can do is Katy Perry in space. We actually have, I didn't think I was ever going to get to use this sound drop again, but we have a sound drop for this. Proving rich ladies can go to space just like rich dudes can. Girls getting it done. So even before this Blue Origin all-female flight into space, it was stirring up controversy. Olivia Munn, former Daily Show correspondent, raised a few eyebrows even before the flight took off talking about this. One second.
Do up in space? What are you doing up there?
Olivia Munn is not feeling over the moon about Blue Origin's all-female space mission. During the April 3rd episode of Today with Jenna and Friends, the guest co-host criticized the mission, which will launch passengers like Katy Perry and Gayle King into orbit.
Like, what are you guys going to do up in space? What are you doing up there? I mean, by the way,
they're going for 11 minutes. They're going for 11 minutes. They're going up. I think they're going to float around a little and then come back.
Like Magic Mountain. Like you're just going up and
Space Mountain. More appropriately, Space Mountain.
Space Mountain.
Olivia then emphasized there are more pressing matters to attend to back on Earth.
I just think about, I know this is probably obnoxious, but like it's so much money to go to space.
Yeah.
You know,
yes.
And there's a lot of people who can't even afford eggs.
The mom of two then doubled down on her feelings after Jenna revealed that all of the women who will be launched into space will be going in full glam.
They are getting their hair done, their makeup done, even eyelash extensions.
Like they said this out loud?
I believe so.
So this is part of the controversy, and Gayle King is very offended, as we'll see, that people are not taking them seriously, and yet they seem to have gone out of their way not to be taken seriously. Blue Origin's all-female crew, including Katy Perry and Lauren Sanchez, that's Bezos's fiance there, prep for glammed-up space launch. They got their own patch. You had a scientist, a filmmaker. It was like a lesbian Gilligan's Island. If they ever did like a lesbian remake, it was kind of like that. The millionaire and his wife. The crew vowed to look their best during the short space flight, with some preparing to make sure their makeup, eyelashes, and hairdos survive the intense force needed to leave the Earth, the weightlessness of space, and the return trip home. Quote, Space is going to finally be glam, Perry previously told Elle. If I could take glam up with me, I would do that. We are going to put the ass in astronaut. So you know what? I think people can be forgiven if they feel that this was not a serious use of resources. So this is the ladies on the launch pad thanking the rocket.
So much.
We love you.
We love you.
Bring us back safe.
We're so grateful.
We're counting on you.
We're counting on you.
We believe in you too.
Thank you for helping us heal.
Okay, so I can't imagine why people felt they were not to be taken seriously. But Gayle King, after they came back and got all kinds of backlash, made a real point that what they did was not a ride. It was much more like what Alan Shepard did.
Like that people are calling it a ride. A ride, you know, you never see a male astronaut who's going up in space and they said, oh, he took a ride. We actually duplicated the route that Alan Shepard did. That's why it's called, this particular capsule is called the New Shepard. We duplicated that route. No one said he took that ride.
Yeah.
It's always referred to as a flight or a journey. So I feel that that's a little disrespectful to what the mission was and what the work that Blue Origin does. We use space technology all the time, whether it's your GPS, whether it's your satellite. That doesn't just happen. Every time a flight goes up, they get some type of information. Two of the astronauts, I still have a hard time calling myself an astronaut, but two of the astronauts.
Okay, well, let's be fair. Let's see what they did up there with this $1 billion flight, some odd.
1, 2, 3. Taking up space!
I don't know why people are calling this a ride. I have no idea. Why would anyone be dismissive of this?
Flynn, I gotcha.
Look at that.
I gotcha, Flynn. Gotcha.
This is serious stuff.
Flynn, can I get Oh, the moon! You guys, I will have to tell you, look at the moon. That's amazing. Wow, look at the blue line.
Oh my gosh.
Oh my God.
Wow. Oh my
That's our pink moon.
Okay. Now it's time to look out for this.
Oh my gosh. So much. Oh my gosh. Whoa. That's amazing.
I have not heard such intelligent observations since the Tommy Lee, Pamela Anderson porn video broke. Oh, wow. Oh, gosh. Oh, wow. Look at that.
Yeah, just watching that just makes me want to deport people to CCOT with no due process. It makes me that angry. I'm so outraged by that. I want to just throw people in prison for no reason at all for the rest of their lives.
Well, that's what they clearly didn't think of before they went up there, how they were just going to add fuel to the CCOT fire with this.
Yeah, exactly.
So this was a pretty funny headline, Lauren Sanchez's Cosmic Bachelorette Party, but she got something wrong that a lot of people got wrong about this. The plan for America's first all-female space flight was to look good, have a great time, and do a lot of screaming. This was not the first, well, it was America's first all-female space flight, but it was not the first all-female space flight. No one wants to draw attention to that because the first all-female space flight was actually in 1963, Valentina Tereshkova of the Soviet Union. Because she was alone, it's an all-female flight. If you don't know what this is from the Free Press, if you don't know what a bachelorette party is like, let me tell you. It's like being vacuum sealed in a tin can with a bunch of girls you don't know that well, but with whom you have to pretend to have a life-changing experience for the sake of the bride, who invited everyone and who has a vision. In other words, it's exactly what happened on this morning's historic American spaceflight. See, when you have unlimited resources, you could just kind of arrange a space mission for your fiance. Yeah, honey, you want to go into space? I can arrange that. So, of course, this generated a lot of memes. is kind of funny. 'Cause
Yeah.
Katy Perry kissed the ground, getting off a commercial flight in 2025. Now, Olivia Munn quote tweeted this or Instagrammed it. $1 billion bought some good memes, I guess. Now, I will say, this seems like sour grapes. Olivia Munn, if you don't know, she's an actress, a director. She seems like the kind of person that if she had been invited on this flight, would have been there with bells on. She's not. She's far from a radical anti-oligarch activist. However, somebody who is that kind of activist is Emily Ratajkowski. That's how you say her name?
Yeah.
Ratajkowski.
Yeah.
Emily Ratajkowski, going way back to the Bernie days. I shared this article quite a bit. I still do sometimes. You remember how we all got called sexist and Bernie bros? So she was a Bernie supporter, and she just got absolutely horrible sexist comments from Hillary supporters. Socialism is about sharing resources. In that spirit, show us your tits. Wow, man. Can you imagine if a Bernie supporter had said something like that? Be on the front page of the New York Times. So HuffPost.
I mean, to be fair, Bernie supporters would never ask to see Hillary's tits.
I mean, there are whole websites dedicated to the Hillary fetish. It's very common, actually. So Ratajkowski, still doing her thing, commented, probably had the best commentary on this.
Space mission this morning. That's end time shit. Like, this is beyond parody. Saying that you care about Mother Earth and it's about Mother Earth and you're going up in a spaceship that is built and paid for by a company that's single-handedly destroying the planet. Look at the state of the world and think about how many resources went into putting these women into space. For what? For what was the marketing there? And then to try to make it like, I'm disgusted. Literally, I'm disgusted.
All right. And then she followed up the next day, really addressing the whole identitarian thing that Gayle King is playing up.
I'm back. I have more to say. I think that this space mission is confusing to people because seeing women and people of color in spaces like science and politics that have not previously included them feels and really looks like optically looks like progress. But the truth is that having a man who has gained his power and become a part of the 1% purely through exploitation and greed, deciding to take his fiance and a few other famous women to space for space tourism is not progress. Instead, just speaks to the fact that we are absolutely living in an oligarchy where there is a very small group of people who are interested in going to space for the sake of getting a new lease on life, while the rest of the population, most people on planet Earth, are worried about paying rent or, having dinner for their kids. I saw a creator on here who said that privilege is not an accomplishment. Even further, and say that exploitation is certainly not an accomplishment, and then being able to take the privilege that you have gained from exploitation and greed of the planet, of resources, of human beings, and then doing something like going to space for 11 minutes is certainly not an accomplishment. That's why this all is giving like Hunger Games, right? When I'm making another video is because I think we're in a place in the world where we need to be able to discern what real progress looks like. And what happened yesterday was nothing like that. And
Very well said. This meme.
Yeah, she's great. She's great. I mean, she's what we in the straight male community call the complete package.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
It doesn't get better than that.
This meme sums it up very well. Conservatives, 100 people should own the world. Leftists, no, they shouldn't, you fucking sociopaths. Neoliberals, half of those people should be women. Exactly. Exactly. That's exactly what that flight represents, which Ratajkowski, she expressed that very well. And hey, man, it's very rare that somebody in her position will take these kinds of stands. Why do you think you don't see her that much? To Keaton's point, she's one of the world's most beautiful women. You hardly ever see her because she says shit like this.
Right.
She played her cards right, she'd be on that flight.
She'd be on the flight. Yeah, exactly. She'd be in space.
So,
exactly.
Good. So good for her. Yes, you're right. Like, and wokeness gets in on this and they use it to gin up like human atrocities. But we cannot forget that these people have not done any reflection whatsoever on what Donald Trump's victory means. And they are going to continue to try to define what progressive values are. And I think a lot, perhaps most people, seeing that, they see absolutely nothing being offered to them. Whereas on the other side, yeah, we're fighting for you. And you know how we're doing it? We're getting rid of that MS-13 guy who cuts the roses at the bodega.
Right.
It's something. It's something. What is this? What is this? You know, rich, non-white, straight male people can go to space too. Aren't you inspired? And if you're not inspired, you're a bigot.
Right. There's something wrong with you. Yeah, no. Well, we talked about this on the Post-Duopoly show last night, which, by the way, that was a great one. That was one of the best, if not the best, Post-Duopoly ever, I thought. We finally met our friend Nico House. We had never crossed paths with him.
You never met him?
before.
I thought you did back in the day. No?
No, I never met Nico House. He was yeah. So I had never met him until last night. I mean, we follow each other, we share each other's stuff every once in a while, but yeah, I'd never met him. And then it was great to see JB with a brand new kidney, looking healthy, and that was
I
didn't
even know about that.
Yeah, he got a kidney transplant.
He looks
it was
great.
A success, and he's
he
home.
Looks really good.
Yeah. I mean, I think he got the transplant like 3 or 4 days ago. Like, it wasn't long ago. So he's back home. Apparently, they send you home just good as new. So that's awesome. But one of the things that we touched upon last night is how, this is what creates a pendulum swing, because you see this and you think, wow, this is cringe. Let's take a chance on Donald Trump. Whoa, that was a mistake. Let's go back to them. Oh, whoa, these people are cringe. Let's go back to the right wing. This is what creates a pendulum swing, because you what you have here are just two wings of an oligarchic class that just clearly have nothing good to offer workers. And at this point, I don't even know if you can call them two wings, because Bezos is basically Trump now. I mean, Bezos kissed the ring. So this is
they
a Trump
didn't have
op.
any
This
problem
is
with that.
It's a MAGA psyop. That's what this was.
Right. All of these supposed libs, it's a big club and you ain't in it.
Right. Exactly.
In the end, he's rich.
He's
rich, which means, he's with us.
Right.
You watch Joe Rogan now. He's like fucking Stanley Tucci in the Hunger Games. Oh, tell me more. Tell me more about the Trump policies.
Yeah.
Rodkowski, what she's talking about, Hunger Games, it's on all sides. It's on all sides. All of these people are pumping up oligarchs and billionaires. There's no escape from it. The only difference is aesthetic. Oh, look, we launched a diverse crew of women into space with Jeff Bezos, who owns the Washington Post, which withdrew its endorsement, its policy of endorsing candidates in order to not endorse the person I'm sure everyone on that flight was backing. That's okay. He's rich. He's a rich guy.
They should have given
what
them.
are we even talking about? Trade schmade.
They should have given them like some kind of mission to justify the trip. This way people wouldn't think it was a ride. They should have sent them up to rescue the Boeing people. That would have been great. You tell the Boeing, you tell the stranded astronauts, all right, help is on the way. Who you sending? Katy Perry, Gail King. I'm sorry, what? Over and out. They'll be there soon.
In all seriousness, if you really believe, and Gail King's been the most outspoken about this, if you really believe what she's claiming, that this should be taken seriously and it's an inspiration for women and girls to see that, if you really believe that, would you be talking about how you're gonna make sure your hair and your makeup and your nails are done? When Katy Perry says she's bringing glam to space, nobody felt like they should tell her to shut the fuck up. Like, doesn't that play to the worst cliches and stereotypes of why women don't deserve those positions? That's not something I believe. But aren't you reinforcing that idea by behaving in such an absurdly stereotypical way?
Right. Yeah, of course. Oh, man. Well, I guess now we got to get on with the rest of the show. I wish we didn't have to. I wish they could all be like this,
Yeah.
I wish we could just dunk on lib virtue signaling for the next 3 hours, like the old days.
Like the old days.
This kind of makes me miss Kamala. I think I want her back. I want
Yeah.
I want to do shows like this. I don't want to talk about people being sent to torture prisons and genocide and all this stuff. The woke has to come back. It's yeah, you know, I miss them. You know, you do a segment like that, you're like, I miss these days, you know.
Right. We're not even covering England redefining sex and gender.
Yeah, no, exactly.
We're not even covering it.
Right. That's right. We can't even do that. We can't even cover that.
Yeah.
Look, I'm looking at the list here. There's too much serious stuff. Horrible.
I said I wasn't going to talk about it. Keaton called me last night. He was crying. He was like, "Can we do the Turf Island story? Can we just do the Turf Island story, please?"
I begged him to include it. He said, "No. There's more important things." I said, "Okay, fine." Kuznetsky Bassane, thanks for the $4.99. Take names and kick ass DD. Thank you, Kuznetsky Bassane. Appreciate that very much. Devin Garrett says, what do you guys think is going on with Luigi? Was he set up? If so, how? I've tried finding a video from you guys on the topic, but no dice. Thanks. We got to go back a few months. I mean, that was December, and we did a handful of them. We did a handful of videos on him back then. Yeah, I mean, look, our line on the show is that he didn't do anything. We don't believe that a guy who had the foresight to commit that crime and escape Manhattan Island would be so careless and stupid as to keep the murder weapon and his manifesto on him at a McDonald's in Pennsylvania, sitting around like a sitting duck. Smells like a setup to us. We just need one juror to agree with that theory, so that's our story.
Somebody, I think, tagged us in a tweet saying the Mangione family has long ties to the Pelosi's.
Oh, interesting.
I mean, it makes sense. Isn't that where the family came from?
Where?
Like Maryland, like the she's from an old.
You mean Italy? Yeah, I mean they're both Italians.
No. She's from like a wealthy political dynasty from back east that wound up going to California. That's why she has like family ties to the Kennedys, like relationships with the Kennedys. You remember she endorsed that Kennedy.
Oh yeah, the little guy with the schmutz on his lip there. You remember that guy? Joe Kennedy III?
Right.
He gave the speech with that weird fluid oozing out of his mouth that no one knew what the hell it was.
Well, yeah. I think we all know what that was.
You don't want to know. Believe me, you're better off not knowing. It's a long story. It'll come out someday.
Listen, if you want to run for office in this family, we have an initiation ritual. You're not going to like it.
You're not going to like it. Some things are better left unsaid.
Mad Wolf, hey, so what do you guys think of the guys from Duran, Alex and Alexander? Maybe you guys can have them on your show and have a 2 versus 2 on current topics. Just an idea. You know, I saw Jimmy interview them a while. I've watched some of their stuff, very little. It's not an insult to them. I only watch our friends because that's all I have time to watch. You know, I watch Hardlands, I watch RBN, I watch Jimmy, I watch the Gray Zone when they're on. They don't stream as often. But that's about it. I mean, it's no insult to anybody else, but we're too busy to watch much. So I haven't seen much of their stuff, but yeah, I like what I see. Seem cool. Fertile Green, MAGA is not a political movement. It's a vehicle to transition current DEI laws, policy into Zionist-heavy DEI laws and policy. Yes, exactly. It's JEI, Judaism, Equity, and Inclusion. You should call them a JEI.
Zionism.
ZEI. ZEI. There you go. Perfect. I like that. That's better because Z rhymes.
Squirrel's going to get pissed at us.
Well, yeah. Z rhymes with D. So ZEI. I like that. That's what we're calling MAGA now. ZEI. I like it. Let's get that trending, folks. Let's make that happen. ZEI. That's our nickname for MAGA at this point. Beautiful. All right. See? I like it. I love it. All right, folks. We're going to move right along here. This was kind of surprising. Mickey Rourke held a rally or a town hall of sorts in Georgia the other night.
Really?
Oh, wait a minute. No, that's not Mickey Rourke. No, sorry. Because that's Marjorie Taylor.
It looks just like him in the wrestler.
Yeah. It looks just like him. All right, well, this story is less exciting now. This is not as newsworthy, I suppose, but we'll make it work. Yes, Marjorie Taylor Greene, my apologies, had a town hall in her district, Georgia's 14th, the other night, and she knew that protesters were going to be showing up, and so she got out in front of this, making a video preemptively attacking whatever protesters showed up to try and shout her down.
I'm here in downtown Ackworth. We are very excited for the town hall tonight, so I'd like to thank everyone that's planning to come. Now, this is a town hall that's strictly for constituents. That means you have to live in my district and you had to sign up on the sign up link. That's important. Make sure you bring your ID, as we will be verifying that you actually live in the district and have signed up to be in the town hall. Also, this is important for everyone attending the town hall. You need to understand this is not a place to protest. This isn't
We'll
a
see
place
about
to
that.
stand up and scream and yell. This is a place to sit and listen.
Wait, you think
And
this is
we already have
America?
questions if you're signed up.
I
can't
talk,
wait
you
to see
listen.
you tonight, and I look forward to it. But I have one word of warning for you. If you're planning to act up, scream, and protest, you're going to be thrown out. And that's the way it goes. We know how the
We're
Democrat
playing by
Party
China
is
rules
organizing
tonight.
and funding
Yes.
these protests for Republican town halls all across America. And I'm just going to tell you, I don't tolerate it. America voted for President Trump. They voted for Republicans to be in charge in Congress and the Senate. And they have voted to put America first. And that's exactly what we're doing. All right, I'll see you tonight.
See you tonight. Yeah, sounds like a fun time.
That
really
is-
selling it.
No, really, that's remarkable because, Marjorie Taylor Greene would be the first one to jump up and talk about social credit scores in China and suppression of speech in other countries. And you're literally describing a totalitarian political event. You're describing a political event with totalitarian rules. You can't protest. You can't speak back. You can't cause any ruckus. Okay, so what you're describing is not a democracy at that point. You're describing a totalitarian society where political figures give speeches unchallenged.
Yeah. Exactly. And the fact that video was designed to plug the event, and literally 90% of the video was warning protesters not to
Warning
act up.
people.
Like, it's 90%. Hey, but it should be a great time. Okay, well, outside the event, protesters lined the streets as far as this camera could see. So this is Greg Bluestein, who was apparently in attendance. He apparently covered it on the ground. I'm assuming this is all his video because he tweeted it out. I'm outside Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene's town hall in suburban Cobb County, where a group of protesters gathered to rally against her policies. Here we go. So this is outside where they were allowed to protest. For now, for the time being, in America, you're allowed to have an outdoor protest in public. So there you are, lining the streets, pretty much like I said, as far as that camera's eye can see. Here's one woman here. You serve Georgia's 14th, not Trump, not Musk. And look at the bottom there, not your stock portfolio. Remember that. More on that later in the segment. But there were several references to stock trading amongst all of these protesters, which we will get to in due time. But the rally kicked off with a protester being thrown off. So here is the crowd standing in applause for Marjorie Taylor Greene, and the first thing that happens is a protester gets shanked and tossed out. There she is. Wave hello. Before she could even talk. Before she even opens her mouth.
Well, welcome everyone.
The guy gets dragged out.
Wow. Woohoo! Wow. Look at these fucking Nazi punk.
Yeah.
Nazis.
Yep, that is before she could even open her mouth. A protester gets thrown out. Jackie Singh, Marjorie Taylor Greene's town hall yesterday, was one ugly anti-democratic mess. Several citizens were arrested and tased, with one defamed by her on the mic as an illegal alien as he was being dragged out. So here's this.
All right. Thank you so much, everyone. What is that, the illegal alien? I don't know. That's an illegal alien. So you can see Democrats support. They support illegal aliens.
Okay, now we know what's happening to illegal aliens nowadays. We know what the treatment is for the illegal aliens. So assuming that guy is not an illegal alien, and Matt Taibbi is suing a member of Congress for defaming him as a sexual predator, I think that guy might have a lawsuit against her. That's defamation if he's not an illegal alien. He should
Sure.
sue her for millions of dollars. She has it. She has it. She made out very, very well on Trump's tariff switcheroo. So I would go after some of that money if I were this guy, and he's not, in fact, an illegal alien, assuming he is not.
All right. Thank you so much, everyone. What is that, the illegal alien?
You can't just put a target on the guy's back like that if you don't know what you're talking about. You should sue her.
That's an illegal alien. So you can see Democrats support. They support illegal aliens.
They support illegal aliens. Okay, here's another sort of general breakdown. We might see a couple things we've already seen in this, but this is part of that same tweet. So here's another angle of the first guy.
They are the party of violence. They are the party.
Oh, yeah.
Go.
Democrats are the party of violence. You go get them.
If you want to sit and listen, you're welcome to listen. Everyone across the aisle.
Some guys were tased with stun guns. There's a stun gun. Woohoo! You know, these aren't fascists at all. No, that's mean.
No.
It's a real peaceful town hall. Oh, it seems like it.
I mean, this is just like a parody. Yeah, it's just a parody.
Guys getting tased in the corner of the room.
If you showed this in another country, these same Republicans would be talking about how terrible the suppression of freedom and individual rights. You see, they don't respect your rights in those countries. I mean, this is a totalitarian event.
Oh, yeah.
What else do you call it? If anyone speaks out about what you're saying, they get dragged out.
It's a town hall. The whole point of a town hall is to hear from the
tased
public.
the guy?
Yeah.
They
yeah. The whole point of a town hall is to hear from the public.
Well, and this is the scariest thing about things like this. And being in this space, we see quite a lot of it. It's not a small number of people who welcome fascism. It's a lot of them.
Oh, yeah.
It's a lot of them. These people are cheering for fascism. There are a lot of people are just fundamentally stupid and broken. And if you tell them, no, don't worry, you'll be on the strong side with the strong people, they'll go along with anything.
Yep, 100%. 100%. And here is another reference to insider traders. Protester with a jail for insider traders sign removed from Marjorie Taylor Greene's town hall.
I am one of the members of Congress that usually has the
that sign
highest
says
amount
jail
of death
for
threats.
insider traders.
As a matter of fact,
So now he's out. And now, I guess, with the protesters out, she's able to take questions. But she's taking pre-submitted questions, not off of note cards, but that were, I guess, emailed in advance. The questions are posted onto the screen. So now that she gets a question from a dissenting constituent, let's hear how she responds to this Georgia 14 resident who is concerned about the overreaches of Trump and Doge that Marjorie Taylor Greene is, of course, not only enabling, but profiting off of, as we'll see pretty soon.
what are you doing to protect us in the 14th district from the damage and extreme hardship of Trump's tariffs? Gutting of Social Security and Medicaid. Wow. Doge gutting our government with a chainsaw approach and the utter destruction and ignoring of our Constitution and rule of law. He is not well physically or mentally,
Careful.
and
Are you
he's
allowed to
making
clap for a
nonsensical
dissenter? You're gonna
orders
get
based
tased?
on his whim of the day. How are you going to rein him in to protect us? Oh, poor Christina. Poor Christina. Well, I'm sure, Christina, you think that you're pretty smart. But the reality is you are being completely brainwashed by whatever source of news you listen to. The facts are this. No one has lost their Social Security. No one has lost their benefits. Criminals have lost it. Yes. Fraudsters have lost it.
Oh.
Yes.
Oh.
And illegal aliens have lost it. Yep. And if you want to defend those people where you hate our country and you hate America, what am I going to do? I am going to stand by my president. I am going to support my president. And I am going to fight for his agenda with everything I have in Congress. And that's what I'm going to do for the 14th District, because I know for a fact you are going to have more money in your pocket. You're going to have more jobs available. You're going to have a stronger economy. And you're going to have safe cities and communities to live in. And you'll be safe from terrorists, cartels, and criminals. And God bless President Trump for that.
I mean, this is where
this one is Nazi punks. Fuck off.
I mean, this is where you gotta, we have to hold each other accountable as citizens. I mean, who walks into a voting booth and pulls the lever for someone like this? And I'm not saying the Democrats don't have these kinds of people on their side where you think, how do people vote for these people? They do, of course. So it's not unique to their Republican
It's a different
Party.
flavor. It's
a different flavor. But I mean, you look at the just dripping contempt that she has. Oh, poor, whatever her name was. You must be getting your news from somewhere that tells you that your benefits are being cut. Well, we know a lot of people have not gotten checks on time. We know a lot of people, have been culled from the rolls. We know that Elon has made it very, very clear he intends to really broaden the fight against Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, and she's going to come up here and gaslight you into saying, no, the fraudsters, they were denied their checks. Who are the fraudsters? Well, I guess the people who Howard Lutnick thinks are the fraudsters. The people who complain are the fraudsters. Right? And that's her answer. That's her answer. It's amazing. It's amazing. So she finally got enough peace and quiet to answer a pre-written and pre-submitted question. But we do have to come back to this. So Unusual Whales tweets out, how is this allowed? Politician Marjorie Taylor Greene was trading heavily before tariff news. She, for example, bought up to $100,000 in U.S. Treasury bills before news that the tariffs would be paused. The stock market boomed after. Unusual. So here are some of Marjorie Taylor Greene's trades that were posted and then published on Unusual Whales. You see a decent number on April 4th, which is after the tariffs were put in place. But if you look a little closer, it's a little hard to see. But the date on a lot of these is April 8th, which is the day before Donald Trump announced the 90-day pause, well before he even tweeted about the 90-day pause, because the tweet came out the morning of April 9th, which was about 3 hours in advance of the official pause announcement. So she did a whole lot of buying the night before Donald Trump signaled that he was going to pause the tariffs, which raises some suspicions, rightfully so, I think. Marjorie Taylor Greene bought stock before market jumped on Trump tariff pause. Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene bought between $21,000 and $315,000 worth of stock right before President Donald Trump announced he would temporarily pause sweeping tariffs targeting dozens of specific countries, which led to the stock market jumping in value. The purchases, made public in a federal disclosure on April 11th, come as Democrats call for an investigation into whether Trump participated in insider trading. Less than 4 hours before pausing for 90 days the individual nation tariffs on April 9th, Trump told his followers on Truth Social, "This is a great time to buy." The White House said the post reflected the president's responsibility to reassure the markets and Americans about their economic security. So this, as I mentioned, was 9:37 a.m. on April 9th. There were a lot of people who bought based on that tweet. We've seen that in the charts. The real suspicious activity is from people who bought shortly before that tweet.
Yep.
Right? That's the more suspicious part of this, which includes Marjorie Taylor Greene, as you saw, quite a few transactions the day before on April 8th. That same day and the day before, more importantly, I wish USA Today had included that in their write-up. One of Trump's closest allies in Congress bought between $10,000 and $150,000 worth of stock in companies such as Adobe, Apple, NVIDIA, Palantir, and Cummins the day before. Oh, they did. Okay. Never mind. I take it back. I forgot about that part. The day before, on April 8th, Greene had purchased another $11,000 to $165,000 of stock in Amazon, FedEx, JP Morgan Chase, Lululemon, very woke, Marjorie Taylor Greene, investing in Lululemon. I don't know how those down-home Georgians feel about that. Nike, Qualcomm, Tesla, of course, and other companies. She also sold between $50,000 and $100,000 worth of U.S. Treasury bills. A spokesperson for Greene did not immediately return a request for comment, but Greene told the Associated Press in a statement, "I have signed a fiduciary agreement to allow my financial advisor to control my investments. All of my investments are reported with full transparency." Well, apparently they are, and once we got a look at the transactions in the timeline, that is what raised people's suspicion. So Unusual Whales then tweets out on the 16th, this would be yesterday, breaking, Marjorie Taylor Greene has responded to the news that Unusual Whales broke regarding her hundreds of thousands of dollars in stock trading before the tariff pause. So here's her answer.
There's been a lot of coverage on the stocks buys that you made in the days before and the day of the announcement that these tariffs were being paused. Was there anything that you knew ahead of time? Can you at least respond to the criticism that's been published?
You know, I think that criticism is laughable. President Trump has been talking about tariffs for decades. President Trump announced April 2nd is when he was putting tariffs in place. I have a fiduciary agreement with my portfolio manager. I don't place my buys and sells. That's something that the portfolio manager does for me, and he did a great job. Guess what he did? He bought the dip, and that's what anybody that has any financial sense does when they know the market's going to be going down. That was obvious to everyone, and President Trump had announced tariffs long before. That wasn't anything, that wasn't a secret. Big public information.
Okay, so she's obviously bullshitting there.
Yeah.
What she says at the end.
Not so evasive. He announced tariffs. No, but he didn't. He said the tariffs were going to be permanent.
Right. Exactly.
It looked like the entire market was going to fall off a cliff. Why would you buy at that moment? There was plenty more downside to go if you took him at his word.
Exactly.
It was obvious to everyone, and President Trump had announced tariffs long before.
Yeah, so she's acting like she bought ahead of the tariffs, as if the dip came ahead of the tariffs. No, the dip came because of the tariffs, and it was the fact that he suspended the tariffs that caused the boom. And when you look at the time, even buying on April 4th is kind of weird because the tariffs hit on April 2nd. April 4th seemed like a pretty precarious time to buy as well, but especially April 8th, given that he paused the tariffs the very next day. That seems a little more suspicious than simply buying the dip. And let me tell you something. Even if you did buy the dip, it's a bad look. I would argue a terrible look for an elected official to boast that her financial advisor bought the dip and that she came out great in all of this. Because, you know, a lot of people who sold at the bottom because they wanted to salvage what little remained of their retirement, they got really fucked hard because they did not have advanced knowledge that the tariffs were going to be suspended. There are certain people, obviously, I mean, it's just basic logic, that when the market goes down because people are thinking, oh shit, got to get out and save what I have.
Yeah.
So what about the people who sold at the bottom? What about the people who sold at the bottom? Don't you represent some of those people? Should you be gloating that, oh yeah, no, I played it super smart. I bought the dip and I came out better than I did going in. That's a very, very out-of-touch thing to say, assuming no insider trading. But, of course, the timeline is a bit more suspicious than that.
Well, and I want to see all these people who, when you talk about corruption in government, want to talk about how much money Elizabeth Warren has made since she's been in the Senate. Or certainly something we've talked about quite a lot, how much money Nancy Pelosi has made since she has been in Congress. Are you going to talk about this? Are you going to look at this? We've always tried to make it clear this is not specific to Nancy Pelosi. They all do it. But you've got someone like Marjorie Taylor Greene and her party running around talking about how they're going to drain the swamp. They're going to get rid of the corruption. They're going to clean the place up. It's a big club and you ain't in it. It is like the Hunger Games. You know, somebody like Marjorie Taylor Greene, it's like she won the Hunger Games. Now you live in the capital and you have access to all of the exploitation of the population that the other ones do. She's in the ruling class now. She's playing those ruling class games. I never actually, with Elizabeth Warren, I never looked into it. You know, people would throw that out very apropos of nothing about the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau that she's not involved in. But I never looked into it, but I didn't look into it because I said, yeah, it's probably true. I mean, I assume it probably is because that is how widespread the corruption is. That's why you can't get them to pass a law not allowing Congress to trade, because they're all benefiting from it. Who watches the Watchmen? How are you going to get them to do that? It's like trying to get them to pass a salary cap. They're not going to, on Congress. They're not going to do that.
Exactly. They're not going to vote to disempower themselves in that way, or to, you know, give themselves what amounts to, in practical purposes, a pretty drastic pay cut, right? Because you're really cutting yourself off from the perks of the job.
That's where the real money is.
Exactly.
Man. Insider trading.
Yep. I mean, $170,000 a year, which is what their salary is not a lot in today's economy, especially since, you know, you got to travel a lot for the job. And, you know, some of that I'm sure comes out of the campaign coffers. But, you know, a lot of these people have to have second homes in D.C. I mean, that's a lot. So, you know, they chase the extra cheese on the side. And, yeah, I mean, I think that is worth looking into. Absolutely. 100%. But, you know, as for the town hall itself, yeah, I mean, it's just, I mean, what a dystopian event that turned out to be. And, you know, this tweet comes up later in the show. I have this for another segment, but this tweet went kind of viral for good reason. Evan Loves Worth. The lesson of the Holocaust was not that the Nazis were uniquely evil. The lesson was that anyone can become a Nazi. You're witnessing this with America right now. Bingo.
Exactly. And this is part of what a lot of people who think that Trump's playing 5D chess don't get. He's not, as we'll see later. You know who's playing 5D chess? China.
Right.
They're playing 5D chess. That's what 5D chess looks like. He's not playing 5D chess to the extent that these guys have no concept of what soft power means and how important it is. Not only the economics of it aside, when you make your country so disgusting and loathsome to most reasonable people, they don't want to do business with you.
Right.
You're incentivizing these countries between hitting them with tariffs and making the most visible representatives of this country such repulsive lowlifes.
Right.
Hey, I really don't want to make a deal with the United States.
Right, exactly.
You know, let me call Japan. Let's see if we can work something out.
We'll do
without let's see. How can I avoid dealing with these disgusting creeps in America?
Right. If it costs us a few $100 billion, it costs us a few $100 billion. That's the Chinese ethic. That's not the American ethic. The American ethic is money talks, everything else is bullshit. But no, not everybody is as piggish and as shallow as we are. But we'll save that for a future segment because that's coming up later in the show. All right. What do we got here? Over the Top says... What does he say? The gaggle of juggernauts exemplifies the femocracy we are getting shoved down our throats. Thank you, Over the Top. The Oganer, I don't know what that was. The Oganer Okirkian says Tereshkova was trained for like a year before she went to outer space. Now everyone goes, I don't think so. Yep, that's my name. Thank you. Michael Castillo, thanks for the $5. Dan Bongino has ties with members of Luigi family. He said it on his show. Oh, is that right? Talk about a big club. Artie Blarty Fartblast.
Everybody whose name ends in a vowel is connected to these people.
Right, yeah, exactly, yeah. The Silver Surfer being a bloke remains an important issue. Thank you for that. Appreciate that.
Listen, I am just going to say, man, especially now, things have gotten as serious as they have. You know, I've talked a little bit about how these nerd channels are running out of content. But I just got to say, man, what does it say about our society that you got so many people in their fucking 40s and 50s who are obsessed with superheroes?
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Like, come on, man. You know, I thought about this. You know, I did my whole like Star Wars video And, my emphasis is really, I feel bad for the kids. I'm 55, man. Like, if Star Wars were still good, do I think I would really be watching it? Probably not.
Right.
Like, do I want to watch like a simple good versus evil morality tale about space wizards as a middle-aged man? Not really. Not really. I mean, as a society, we've produced the kind of people who not only want to do that, but are obsessed with the quality of the product. It says more about us than it does about the product, frankly.
I believe so, yes. Killer Hinton says, how the fuck did it take this long for scumbag douchebags to figure out that they can get people to spray, what does that say? But what is that word? pH phthalates, parabens, and aluminum on their genitals simply by calling it deodorant. Ah. Thank you, Killer Hinton. Abiding says, not only did Corn Pop run 3 traps in QB, he also put out an Easter egg hunt in Queens, Bridge Park, 74 to 76, but Mayor Spunky shut it down in 77. Thank you, Abiding. Appreciate that. Let's see. Mad Wolf says, why not send them to the center of the sun and call it Hot Chicks in Space? Was hoping for a Challenger 2.0. Oh, well, maybe this time. All righty. Hamhawk says, I'm sure they weren't the first women to make those pleas to a dildo. Thank you, Hamhawk. Appreciate that. And Nina Kant says, high-end sluts in space. Oh, that's mean, Nina. Good thing you're a woman. Otherwise, we couldn't read that from you.
Look,
a woman said that. We didn't say that. A woman said that. We're giving voice to a woman. That's all we're doing. We're amplifying women's voices.
Nina.
Yes, we're platforming Nina. We're amplifying women's voices. We're all about representation here.
My working title on the slideshow was Hose in Space, I will admit.
Space hose.
Yeah. Hose in space, space.
All right, let's move on. All right, we got another town hall. Well, this is not a town hall. It's more a rally of sorts. This is a Bernie Sanders rally coming up next.
Hang on. Read a couple chats. I want to make sure that I remembered. No, I didn't. Yeah, no. Do some stuff.
All right. Killer Hinton says, I'm sick of poor people whining. My wife can't go to space. Wah! If your life is so bad, get off your fat ass, get an MBA from Harvard, and become an oligarch. It really is that simple. Thank you, Killer Hinton. Appreciate that very much. T-Bone, I love you guys very much. You guys are better than ever. Sorry I would tip more, but the exchange rate blows for me. Peace and love, peace and love. That's no problem, T-Bone. We appreciate that very much. And we want to thank Eric Barry for becoming a Locals member, an annual Locals subscriber. I saw that come across Rumble Studio. Let me make sure I got your name right, Eric. I know I got the first name right. I think I got your name right. Oh, Ed Harry, not Ed Barry. Oh, no, I got none of your name right. I called you Eric Barry. It's Ed Harry. Sorry, Ed Harry. But thank you very much for becoming a member. Appreciate that. You rule. All right, let's move on.
Bernie Sanders has been barnstorming the country with his anti-oligarch tour. Now, this has been really bitter for former Sanders supporters because the libs are feeling the burn 10 years too late. We've seen this whole song and dance. We know how it ends. It ends with him endorsing Buttigieg or Gavin Newsom or somebody else who has never met an oligarch they didn't like. You will never hear Bernie Sanders say a goddamn word about George Soros or J.B. Pritzker or any of the other billionaires they like. Reid Hoffman. His critiques of oligarchy are very specific to the enemies of his masters, as are his critiques of Israel, which will never cross a certain line. So he has a long history of being very mealy-mouthed on this subject. Here's Michael Tracy. This is October 20th, 2023, not long after October 7th. Renowned socialist leader Bernie Sanders declares Israel has the absolute right to do whatever the hell it wants in the name of self-defense, and there is no debate to be had on that.
The mowing down by machine guns of young people who were doing nothing more than attending a dance, the murder of babies.
Attending a dance outside a concentration camp.
This is an horrific act precipitating a worldwide crisis. And the United States of America, all of us, condemn this act. And in my view, the state of Israel has the absolute right to defend itself against Hamas and terrorism in general. No debate on that.
Okay, no debate on that. Here's Sanders in December of the same year saying he doesn't see how a ceasefire with Hamas is possible.
How you can have a permanent ceasefire with Hamas was said before October 7th and after October 7th that they want to destroy Israel. They want a permanent war. I don't know how you have a permanent ceasefire with an attitude like that.
Okay, so the war you're saying against Hamas is justified in that way.
I think Israel has the right to defend itself and to go after Hamas.
Okay. I don't know who this young lady is. I have to compliment her on her poise in this interview. This is Zay Squirrel, now to be known as Zionist Equity and Inclusion Squirrel.
Yeah.
I told you, I'm just kidding, Zay Squirrel. He's got a based account. I told you Bernie Sanders lied when he said not a single nickel to Netanyahu. He solely wants to limit certain offensive arms sales. He does not support a weapons embargo and sanctions like he backs against Russia. He still refuses to recognize the genocide. He still repeats the Hamas started this war, 1,200 innocents, genocidal atrocity propaganda, and he still solely limits his tepid bullshit criticisms to the extremist Netanyahu government when the vast majority of Israelis back the genocide, and it is a Zionist Israeli project. So let's see what he says about defining it as a genocide.
Your view is what Israel is doing in Gaza a genocide?
In my view, it is absolutely disgraceful, horrible, and I'm doing, as a United States Senator, everything I can to end it.
But do you buy the South African case at the International Court of Justice that what Israel is doing in Gaza constitutes genocide or genocidal acts?
I think, look, we can argue about definitions. It is horrible.
But if one agrees that it is a genocide, it means that other states have a legal right and duty to prevent genocidal acts being carried out.
But see, we can talk about that. But what does that mean? I mean, in real terms? Right now, what I am trying to do is what I think is probably maybe, and I can do it because I'm a senator. You can't. Right now, maybe, if we tell Mr. Netanyahu that he's not getting a check with $10 billion more to continue his aggressive action, he and his right-wing friends may decide it is not a good idea to continue to do.
It's all on Netanyahu. It's not the core premise of Israel is racist and cannot exist under its current premises without the institution of an apartheid regime. It's Netanyahu and the Likud party, and we take care of that, and Israel is wonderful, and it has a right to defend itself.
Well, the whole idea of when he says sorry, but it's very important when he says there, well, what does that concretely mean if you say that other countries, have an obligation to intervene? Well, that means something very concrete. That's very material. That's not abstract. That's not theoretical. By making the case and prosecuting the case that it's a genocide, that gives other countries an obligation to intervene to stop it. It's actually very important. It's not semantical the way he frames it.
Right. Well, of course, he's being slippery.
Yeah. And one more thing on his right to defend and stuff like that. Why did I know that language like that served as a permission slip to commit genocide? I knew that as a relatively young, relatively uninformed compared to, you would think, a veteran of socialist movements who's now in his 80s, right? Why did I say the first broadcast after October 7th that's what's going to happen now is a genocide? They're going to go in there. They're going to displace whoever they can and kill whoever they can. I knew that. So talk like that is what gave them permission to do that. You have to know that serves as permission to do that. You can say a state has a right to defend itself if you have an understanding that they will do so responsibly with concern for civilian life. You had absolutely no reason to believe that in Israel's case. And he said it anyway. Then he opposed the ceasefire. Then he refused to call it a genocide. And now to this day, he still blames the Netanyahu government as if it's just a left-right divide in Israel. As if, well, if just the liberals came to power there, then there wouldn't be a genocide. Well, guess what? The liberals were in power here in October 2023 and through all of 2024. And guess what? The liberals, your good friend Joe Biden, enabled the genocide.
Yeah, this is why everyone who is serious about politics is really just not even paying attention to this oligarchy tour. Like, we're not even covering it. We're only covering this because this aspect of it was interesting.
Right.
We haven't been covering it. Oh, look, they got 36,000 people. They got 36,000 MSNBC libs who are going to vote for whoever Rachel Maddow tells them to vote for.
Right.
It doesn't matter. You can have a big anti-oligarchy cakewalk in the middle of Libtown, and in the end, they're not going to support any candidate to the left of Gavin Newsom.
Right.
They might support a candidate whose aesthetics are better than Gavin Newsom's. But in the end, they're going to vote for whoever the establishment tells them to. Norman Finkelstein actually had a monologue that went pretty viral about this, where he called Bernie Sanders a moral monster for defending Israel's right, for claiming Israel's right to defend itself, saying, would you have said that about the Nazis? Would you have said that they had a right to defend itself? So I actually covered on the ground the Sanders-Bowman rally that certainly did not attract 36,000 people, that attracted maybe 1,000 people if they were lucky, and I don't think even that. I'm telling you, man, Trump winning was the best thing that ever happened to these people. It's like when Michael Jackson died and people said that was the best move for his career he could have made. Trump winning was a great career move for Bernie Sanders and AOC. So we got him on camera there, touting that same line as late as June 2024. We did a little mashup here. We'll play a bit of that.
Jamal also understands that what's going on in Gaza today is totally unacceptable.
A few moments later.
Israel had the right to defend itself against a terrorist attack. Today in Gaza, kids have no electricity. And what's going on right now, because of the blockage of humanitarian aid, thousands and thousands of children are dealing with malnutrition and face starvation. That is not what the American people want. That is not what Democrats want.
The view of Palestinians is simple. Well, the Europeans treated the Jews badly, culminating in the Holocaust, and they gave them our land as compensation. Of course, we say it's our land. The Torah says it. But they don't believe in the Torah. So, that's the reason there is not peace. They invent other reasons, but they do not believe in a Jewish state. And that is why we in America must stand strong with Israel through thick and thin. We must, because that is the reason, not any of these other false shibboleths, why there is not peace in the Middle East.
I just want to tell the next disruptor, I am a Zionist. I always have been and always will be. And so no amount of harassment or intimidation or bullying is ever going to dissuade me from thinking what is right, and I'm going to support the U.S.-Israel relationship.
There's got to be a ceasefire now. There's got to be humanitarian aid coming in. Hostages must be freed. And we need peace in that area, a two-state solution.
Look, the two-state solution that people talk about is basically would be the greatest reward for the terrorist that you can imagine.
Okay, so this really demonstrates very clearly what Bernie Sanders' role in the Democratic Party is. It's to pretend that the Democratic Party is actually a left party, that it's actually a progressive party, Why do you think they haven't completely destroyed Bernie Sanders? If Bernie Sanders meant an eighth of what he said, they would have driven him out of the party by hook or by crook by now. It's very useful to have him up there saying things like, it's not what the Democrats stand for. Chuck Schumer stood on a stage at AIPAC and literally invoked a religious document, the Talmud, as the basis for the Jewish claim to that land and dismissed Palestinian concerns based on their lack of belief in the fucking Talmud. That's your leader of the Senate at the time that he's saying this, that this is not what the Democrats stand for. Now, I think he was actually in Richie Torres's district, fanatical Zionist Richie Torres's district when he gave this speech, who we just saw there. He's talking about a two-state solution. He knows damn well the Israelis don't want a two-state solution and will not allow it. And I'm sure he knows, as we know, that Netanyahu helped to fund Hamas, that they put Hamas there. He knows all that. And yet he's going to go on a stage, talk about how Israel has a right to defend itself, frame it as if this is about Netanyahu and not about the Israeli project top to bottom. And that, you know, all these horrible things that you're seeing, Democrats aren't for that. And at this time, they're in charge. They're in charge. So who's responsible for it other than your good friend Joe Biden? He's doing the same thing now. He's doing the same thing now. The Democrats know that their approval ratings in the toilet. I think last I heard it's at 21%. They know their brand is toxic. And hey, they'll never say this on MSNBC, but they know Sanders' brand is much more appealing to the average person than Gayle King in space. They know that that appeals more to people. They know they can't sell that Oprah shit. I mean, Kamala proved that, didn't she? You know, nobody's going to vote for anybody because Oprah spent $500,000 on some kind of a propaganda set for her. Call me daddy. Like, nobody's voting for them because of that. So they trot out Sanders to pretend that the Democrats stand for something, to sheepdog people back into the party. But he demonstrated very clearly this week what he actually stands for, something that anyone who's unfortunate enough to have wasted time and money on his campaigns could have told them. So some people unfurled a Palestinian flag and were taken away by the police, with Sanders saying nothing, as you'll see.
What's really interesting is the crowd reacts very positively to the flag.
Of course they do. Of course they do.
And they boo the police when they arrest them or take them out.
Well, what is it? At this point, I think it's 71% of Democrats no longer support Israel.
Right.
And it's a majority of Republicans, not as high as Democrats. We've even lost the MSNBC people.
In America today, we have more income.
I don't think I've spoken enough about income inequality the past 10 years.
Well, that moment tells you right there, that's the whole grift. Right. That's the whole grift. Look, these people are being dragged out by the cops. Oh, the oligarchy, the millionaires and the billionaires.
In America today.
Unbelievable. What's really outrageous about it is they were not disrupting the event, which means that Bernie could have very easily just told the cops, it's okay, they can hang the flag, leave them alone. And that would have been it. They wouldn't have taken him out. He could have just said, it's all right, they're fine. Leave the flag alone, it's fine. That's it. That's all he had to do. And he could have stopped that.
He knows what's going on.
He knows what's going on.
Choosing to ignore it. That's Bernie, man. That's Bernie.
That's him, all right. That's him,
Yep,
all right. Look at the crowd.
That's Bernie.
The crowd
Bernie.
is chanting Free Palestine. He's ignoring them, waiting. Hold on, be quiet. All right, calm down. I got to say for the 11,000th time in the past 9 years about how we have more income inequality than at any time since the Gilded Age. You know, like, it's just, wow.
Yeah. It's sad. It's sad. 10 years ago, we would have been ecstatic to see all of these crowds. And to be fair, the kinds of crowds he's attracting now, they'll put up with it. Right. We actually were in it for a real systemic change in the way the country runs. These people just want to get rid of Donald Trump.
Right.
And they're saying they'll never admit it. Okay, we made a mistake in 2016.
Right.
We were wrong. So I guess this is where the energy is. And if this is where I go to get rid of Donald Trump, this is where I'm going to go.
Right. Exactly. If they felt that Gavin Newsom was the way to get rid of Donald Trump, they'd be filling arenas for him. Exactly. That's all it is. It's of no substance whatsoever beyond that. When you see the crowd chanting Free Palestine and him just waiting for them to stop, when all he had to do was tell the cops, hey, they're fine.
That's Bernie. That's Bernie. That's all of us who are veterans of his two campaigns. That is the guy we came to know and loathe. That is very familiar to all of us. And hey, man, Jimmy, I always say this. Jimmy was the first guy I saw when he endorsed Hillary Clinton to say he's just sheepdogging people into the party. At that time, most of us still just could not detach. I mean, I was amongst them. I said at the time, I said, he might be right, but I got to leave it all on the field, man. Like, look what they did after Goldwater. I was buying into that argument. A lot of people were. We're going to build our bench. That's what the whole squad thing was about. But in the end, time definitely proved him right. I don't think you can argue with that.
No. And as for the two-state solution, obviously, what that reveals is that you believe in an apartheid state's right to be an apartheid state. It shows you don't recognize what the United Nations recognizes, which is that the occupation is illegal. I guess if you believe that the Palestinians would have a sovereign state, I suppose maybe that means you believe in an end to the occupation. But on what terms? Let's say that Palestinians were to have a sovereign state on Israel's border. Is that going to stop Israel from bombing them? Syria is a sovereign state. They're Israel's neighbor. Israel bombs them. Lebanon is a sovereign state. Neighboring Israel. Israel bombs them. Like, you can't, like, even all philosophical arguments aside, how can you advocate for a two-state solution when one state is intent on cannibalizing the other state? It makes no sense. And he certainly knows better. He certainly knows better.
At best, Bernie Sanders is a product of his generation regarding Israel. A lot of the shit that comes out of his mouth is very much what passes for liberal among Zionists his age. That's at best. At worst, and I think it's probably a combination of both, and this was always the case with him, and this is what we came to discover, much to our grief. He knows where the lines are.
Right.
He knows where the lines are that he cannot go over, or they are going to come and fucking destroy him.
Right.
He will talk revolution till the cows come home, but he knows where he can't go if the powers that be are going to tolerate it as just talk rather than to take it as a serious threat. He knows what they'll do if they think it's a serious threat. What did he say to Chris Hedges? I don't want to end up like Nader.
Right. Exactly.
That's it. Everything he does stays within those lines, which makes him as useless as the asshole right here.
Yep. Indeed. Artie Blarty Fart Blast. Oh, no, got that one already. Sorry, Artie Blarty Fart Blast. Virtuoso. If I go to an MTG Town Hall, I at least expect an atomic leg drop and a muscle flexing from her. If I don't, then I'm sure as hell going to cause a ruckus. Thank you. Artie Blarty Fart Blast. Again, that's the one. Nazi town halls are very orderly affairs. Thank you very much. Skyman2204. Thanks for the $20. That's nice of you, Skyman. Appreciate that. Trump's tariffs are going to go down as the greatest pump and dump scheme in history. We've seen the pump and soon will come the dump. Not just stocks, but the country as a whole. The rats are stocking up before jumping ship. Yep. Absolutely, I agree with you.
I mean that's where I'm up here in Buffalo, and I'm like, well, do I want to stay up here? It's this country's probably a really bad bet at this point.
Yeah.
Honestly, we have the opportunity to leave. We should leave.
Hope Johnson, X suspended my account after I posted a clip in the flesh from Pink Floyd's The Wall in response to MTG's Town Hall. Event reminds me of it so much. You thought you might like to go to this show.
It is so funny that you said that during that segment. I almost sang a couple lines of In the Flesh.
Oh, really? Wow.
It reminded me exactly. That's amazing that you said that. That's exactly what I thought of.
Wow.
Put them up against the wall.
What are the odds?
Yep.
America is way more authoritarian than China. Thank you. China Shill, appreciate that. The T-Bone, MTG's Town Hall should just be a regular talk show, kind of a spin on Jerry Springer, where the security runs in periodically and people chant just like they would on Jerry Springer. It would kill. Yes, thank you. Appreciate that very much, T-Bone. Thank you for that Rumble rant. You guys should so have the soundbite of Joe Pesci saying, "What the fuck is this piece of shit?" Thank you. Appreciate that very much. Okay. All right. We will move right along here. All right, folks. This is a funny one. This is a darkly comic one, but this will make you laugh. This is good for a laugh. So Marco Rubio just published an article in the Federalist boasting about his defense of free speech because he shuttered up an agency whose name I forget. To be honest with you, I'll find out along with you guys. It'll refresh my memory. This is the kind of thing where like this reminds me of the early days of Trump term 2, way back in January, February, where every time Doge slashed something, it's, oh, wow, they're taking on the deep state. This is that kind of thing. Rubio.
Oh, all those 2 months ago.
All those 2 months ago feels like a lot longer than that. To protect free speech, the censorship industrial complex must be dismantled by Marco Rubio. Yes, he actually wrote this. During his historic comeback campaign in 2024, President Trump vowed to close the book on a dark chapter in America's constitutional history, the weaponization of America's own government to silence, censor, and suppress the free speech of ordinary Americans. I mean, could you believe this? The American people responded to this promise by giving President Trump a landslide victory last November. Everything this administration has done since then has been laser focused on fulfilling the promises made during that campaign. Today, it is my pleasure to announce the State Department is taking a crucial step towards keeping the president's promise to liberate American speech by abolishing forever the body formerly known as the Global Engagement Center. Yes, this sounds like the kind of thing we're going to hear. We're going to have to read, 50,000 Substack articles about what a great thing this is for free speech and what a great victory this is on certain outlets that I have a strong feeling will be very excited about this. Over the past half decades, bodies like GEC, crafted by our own governing ruling class, nearly destroyed America's long free speech history. The enemies of speech had new lingo to justify their authoritarian impulse. It was disinformation, allegedly pushed by nefarious foreign governments, that was the number one threat to our democracy. To protect our democracy, this disinformation had to be identified and stamped out. GEC's history shows the pernicious way Washington turns laudable public goals into a means of entrenching its own power and rolling back the freedom of regular Americans. No, not unlike what you guys are doing. Unlike what you're overseeing. GEC began life in 2011 as the Center for Strategic Counterterrorism Communications. CSCC's purpose was to monitor the narratives of Al-Qaeda and other terrorist organizations and advise the American government on what counter-terrorist narratives to use in response. But this worthy purpose didn't last long. In early 2016, the Obama administration renamed CSCC the Global Engagement Center, stripping away the explicit focus on international terrorism. Then, after Donald Trump's historic victory in 2016, but before he took office, GEC's mission was expanded to cover any and all foreign state and non-state propaganda and disinformation efforts. Ultimately, the problem wasn't that our government picked the wrong people and NGOs to police disinformation. The problem is that they were picking anybody to do this at all. The entire disinformation industry, from its very beginnings, has existed to protect the American establishment from the voices of forgotten Americans. Everything it does is the fruit of the poison tree. The hoax that Russian interference, misinformation, and meddling is what caused President Trump's victory in 2016, rather than a winning political message that only he was offering. He and not me, because I was a very, very outspoken opponent of his 2016 candidacy, got into numerous fights with him on the campaign trail. Oh, that didn't make the op-ed. This travesty has gone on long enough. Our republic is based on putting trust in the ordinary citizenry. Our founding fathers took the bold step of believing that ordinary citizens can sift through information, decide which policies and candidates are best, and vote accordingly. Well, interesting. You don't really seem to trust Americans to decide on issues of Israel-Palestine. You don't trust ordinary Americans to parse through that information and come to a decision. Finally, as we recommit this country to its core constitutional free speech principles at home. Again, folks, this is Marco Rubio, author of this op-ed. As we recommit this country to its core constitutional free speech principles at home, we will remain vigilant abroad, not just against threats from adversaries such as communist China, but also from less expected countries where authoritarian censorship is gradually strangling true freedom of speech. We are not afraid. At her birth, America was a lone beacon of freedom to the world. If necessary, we will happily be that lone beacon once again. Wow. Wow. I mean, the fucking balls. The balls to be bragging about what a free speech champion you are, as you are rounding people up for writing op-eds against Israel in college newspapers. Just unbelievable. Breaking.
Where the fuck do you get the balls?
Yeah. So Mike Benz was very impressed about this. Breaking, the U.S. State Department has just placed all 30 full-time staff at the Global Engagement Center's remnant known as RFIMI on leave, eliminating all 50 full-time staff positions, and delivered a notice to Congress ending RFMI's existence and $65 million in funding. Wow. Wow, he was so impressed by this, he actually interviewed Marco Rubio about this. Let's hear Mike Benz and Marco Rubio.
Is there any insights that you can provide to the American people about how the State Department is going to go about once again restoring free speech in a world where we are facing foreign threats from the European Union and Brazil and other places to Americans' ability to talk?
Yeah, so the first thing, obviously, is our number one priority is Americans. So we don't want to see an American who happens to be living in London or happens to be living in Europe post something online about American politics or any politics, and all of a sudden they're facing ramifications over there, or they're denied entry, and something happens.
What about Israeli politics?
Oh, we're denying them into our country, or we're going to arrest them because they posted something while living overseas. So our number one interest is the impact it has on Americans. The broader point, which is the one I think the Vice President made very clear in Munich at the security conference, and people freaked out about what he said, but it's true. What is it that links us with Western Europe? What is it that links us with these? It's our shared values. And one of those shared values, we hope, is freedom of expression. I know they don't have a First Amendment, but freedom of expression, right?
Except for Zionism.
And if that is eroded, if suddenly these become places where people are targeted because of what they said or what their opinion is, then one of the pillars of our shared interest, beyond military cooperation and everything else, is under attack. And I think he made a very vibrant point that in some ways you are attacking, by attacking freedom of expression, you are attacking one of the pillars of our shared interest, our shared culture, our shared values. And so I think we raise that.
Okay, now look, I want to be fair. That was only one clip of this interview. I did not seek out the whole thing to watch, but based on Mike Benz's gushing praise for Marco Rubio's gutting of this Global Engagement Center, I think it's safe to assume Mike Benz did not ask him about the hypocrisy of advocating for free speech while cracking down on the speech rights of students protesting against Israel. I'm almost positive Mike Benz raised no such point. If he did, I apologize in advance. But if he didn't, he should turn in his journalism card, because how can you possibly call yourself a serious journalist or commentator or activist in this space or whatever he calls himself and not raise that question. You just let him skate by on the, oh yeah, Vance told him straight in Munich. Like, how can you let him go through an interview without pressing him on that core, obvious hypocrisy? How can you do that? Again, if he did, I take it back. It's doubtful based on his tweets and this excerpt. And if Mike Benz didn't press him on it, you know this guy didn't press him on it. The Ben Shapiro show welcomed Marco Rubio, who, continued his PR tour bragging about this great victory for freedom of speech.
This major move that you just made at the State Department, getting rid of a big chunk of the censorship bureaucracy that had been created and pushed a while back, but then exacerbated over the course of the last few years, hidden. What's the story with what you are doing over at the State Department to get rid of the body formerly known as the Global Engagement Center?
Yeah, I think you have to understand the history behind it. It's real brief. They started it by saying, Al-Qaeda, ISIS, all these terrible groups are radicalizing people online. We should do something about it. And, back when they came up with that 12 years ago, whatever it was, people are like, whatever makes sense. And then it metastasized. And it's like, oh, there's foreign interference in our elections. We need to start going after that. Well, then by 2020, it became a movement to go after voices inside of American politics and begin to label people. And they put a guy in charge who basically was going around saying Trump speaks just like these foreign terrorists. His supporters speak just like these foreign terrorists. So now you have an individual running a State Department entity that was labeling American speech by Americans as foreign interference. And then really the kicker was not only were they doing all that formally from the State Department, but they were taking State Department money and they were giving it to these third-party groups who were supposed to be like independent, verified arbiters of what's true and what isn't, what's good and what's bad. And these groups were deliberately targeting, I believe you were one of the ones they targeted, I think the Federalists, began putting labels on people. Now, you may say, okay, well, what's the importance of label? Well, that's not just the issue here. The issue is not only did they put labels on people, that was then used to go to social media companies. It was used to go to outlets and say, you have to deplatform these people, or you have to cut back on how much views they're getting. You have to go after them. In essence, silence them. So in essence, it metastasized and the metamorphosis into a government-run entity that was targeting political speech in America, labeling it disinformation, and silencing it.
Okay. So, by the way, it looks like he gave that interview at the same time, more or less, that he gave the Benz interview, since if you look the same background. Yeah. Pivot the camera. Yeah, the same flags in the background. So on a tour bragging about this. And yes, he mentioned in his op-ed in the Federalist that the reason he published it there is because they were a target of the GEC. Apparently, he claims Shapiro was a target as well, which is exactly what we said the free speech stance of the Trump crew would be. They are going to defend the speech rights of their allies to express pro-conservative speech, and they're going to crack down on the liberal organizations that seek to infringe upon their rights. I would take that somewhat seriously. In fact, for years under the Biden regime, we did take that very seriously. We've advocated for conservatives' free speech rights on multiple occasions on this show. But in this context, the hypocrisy is just so obscene. As Bindo points out, it's almost funny that this is their angle when the Trump administration is actively disappearing people for holding differing opinions. Connor says Ben Shapiro is literally talking to the guy who is helping imprison and deport people who disagree with the U.S.'s foreign policy of genocide. But since he agrees with it, he's going to deflect to Biden censoring people when he has the chief censor of our time right there with him. Exactly. The Khalil case alone, and there have been many others like it, and now they're talking about going after people, who advocate for deportees and things like that, what they can nail them for. This is the most hostile administration to free speech in my lifetime already, 3 months in. Worse than Bush, and yes, worse than Biden already. The Khalil case, for those who do not understand the magnitude of that, as I've said repeatedly, that is an automatic fail. That is making a left into oncoming traffic on a road test. Once you do that, you surrender your right to advocate for free speech with any modicum of seriousness. And Marco Rubio is the guy who came out and said Rumeysa Öztürk doesn't have a right to be here. He admitted, or his State Department has recently admitted, they found no evidence of any criminality or even any anti-Semitism against her at all. Their evidence was the op-ed that she wrote in a school paper about divestment from Israel on behalf on the part of Tufts University. So for a guy like that to now take a victory lap because he's defunding some $65 million agency is just obscene and absurd. And yeah, anybody who makes a big deal of this as if it's a big victory for free speech, you're also fucking obscene and absurd.
Yeah, this is exactly what we said was going to happen. We spoke out about a lot of this. This is touching on a lot of the Taibbi reporting, a lot of Schellenberger's reporting, and yeah, they did have these ratings agencies that were shutting down speech. I think there are very few people, especially people who make money on this space, who are willing to go the Whitney Webb route of acknowledging no one wants to give you free speech. There are no good guys. There are no champions of free speech. Sure, Plaskett and Wasserman Schultz trying to defend your speech? Absolutely not. Neither are these people.
Of course.
They're not defending your speech. We saw J.D. Vance go up there in Europe, only talk about this kind of woke crackdown on speech, talk about pro-life protesters being rousted, saying nothing about all of the journalists that have been arrested for their reporting on Palestine, particularly in England. Said not a word about it. To see them go up there and start talking about the Digital Information Center, I forget the exact name of it, Countering Digital Hate.
The Digital
Center
Services
for
Act.
Countering Digital Hate, I think it was called. To go up there and talk about that when you're daily disappearing students and you are asserting that you have a right to deny the constitutional rights guaranteed in this country to all people within its borders.
Yes.
You have a right to deny that to student protesters by definition. And then to go and start crying about a story that broke, 3 years ago at this point with the Twitter files, as if this is really the pressing issue of our times. And hey, I agree with it in principle, but when you put it in this context, it's profane and it's such an obvious cover for what they're actually doing. When I saw Matt at Rescue the Republic, I asked him this question. You can find that video online from an interview that we did with him. And I said, but don't you think these guys, once they get in power, they're just, we grew up with the conservatives being the censors. And Matt said, well, then we'll fight them if that's what happens. And hey, man, he has been dropping some articles showing timelines on Khalil and that kind of thing. But I think for people like Taibbi, like Schellenberger, who have reported a lot on what Rubio is talking about here, it's going to put them in a difficult position because on the one hand, you're vindicated and validated, right? After all of these years of, the Democrats sending the IRS to your house and shit. But at the same time, if a bunch of fucking monsters who are committing abuses against freedom of speech that is as severe and arguably, I'd say actually inarguably more severe than the thing you reported on. Yeah, I mean,
they're putting people in jail.
They're putting people in torture prisons. So
well, that's on the MS-13. I'm talking about just in terms of the anti-Israel speech. I mean, yes, but Mahmoud Khalil is in jail. Öztürk is in jail. They haven't just been deported. They're being held while their case is heard. They're in fucking prison while their babies are being born.
Right. So at that point, are you going to keep talking about how Nina Jankowicz sang like Julie Andrews?
Exactly.
Like, is that really what we're going to focus on now? And if you are focusing on that now, I mean, your audience captured. And in the case of someone like Mike Benz, okay, that's not an op. That guy who actually worked in the State Department, you don't think this fucking guy is an op?
Yeah.
Very much like
Fed vibes from that guy.
Very much like Kash Patel, where, they'll give you half-truths about the dark goings-on in the deep state, but it's all oriented towards one side. It's all oriented toward, these crazy libs and Rockefeller people, and they're running the deep state, telling you absolutely nothing about the very scary techno-feudal overlords that they actually work for. Mike Benz is a pure op. Ben Shapiro, obviously, Zionist fanatic, and frankly, probably also an op. We last night on Revolutionary Blackout Network, Nick had a story about how they hacked 4chan.
Right.
And it showed how Israel is planting a lot of this divisive content on 4chan that supposedly is organic from all the incels, and also people with .gov email addresses here. So much of what you see in this space is an op. A lot of these people are being run by the same people they claim to be exposing.
Yep. And speaking of Schellenberger here, Rubio uses Schellenberger's language, censorship industrial complex. That's what Schellenberger writes all the time. This guy here, I pulled the slide since we still had it saved. No evidence linking tough student to anti-Semitism or terrorism, State Department office found. No evidence linking her, not just to terrorism, to anti-Semitism. No evidence of anti-Semitism. They arrested her in the street and now are keeping her in jail. She was just denied bond today, by the way.
Yes. I'm sorry, man.
I'm sorry. You cannot compare deplatforming someone from Facebook to this. We're against them both strongly. We spent years speaking out against it. We've covered the Twitter files extensively. We interviewed Matt about his reporting, which I thought was excellent and valuable. But if you can't tell the difference between that and this, you're no longer to be taken seriously. I'm sorry. This has crossed a line beyond even that.
Right. And this is where I say, look, I'm almost bracing myself because I'm hoping it doesn't happen. I am really hoping a bunch of articles coming from Matt. Schellenberger, I don't have as much of a personal investment in. I am very much hoping Matt does not drop an article tomorrow about how Marco Rubio is putting the Center for Countering Digital Hate on the run now. Yeah, with all of this going on. I
dread the thought.
I hope I don't get that in my inbox. I really do.
We will see. All right. Let's go to Milton Crow. Thanks for the $5. Per Star Wars, what does Russell think of Andor's startlingly accurate depiction of a CCOT-like prison in 2022?
Okay, so I will say I thought Andor was very, very interesting because I love George Lucas's film THX 1138 pre-Star Wars. I think it's one of the best kind of dystopian sci-fi films ever made. Lucas started out this kind of experimental arty filmmaker, which in a weird way, if you go back and you watch Star Wars now, you can kind of see that. Like the whole visuals, everything, like now we're so inured to those images.
Right.
There was nothing that looked like that. So you can kind of see that he took that kind of experimental vision and he applied it in a way that was very commercially oriented. And that was the key to the success. When I saw Andor, I felt like, okay, if George Lucas had decided to make Star Wars for adults, this is kind of what it would have been like. Like it really got into that much darker undertone of this is a world where fascism has, overrun society and people are, living with that fear of being found out as they try to conspire against it. It was very much like, what if the George Lucas who made THX 1138 made Star Wars? It would probably look something like Andor.
Interesting. Atomic Toaster says that Netanyahu is a Netanyahu. It's fun to say in your best Bernie voice. It's a Netanyahu. Thank you, Atomic Toaster. You'll appreciate that. All right, Russell, we have some business to attend to with our CBD sponsors, so you got to put yourself in the back room for just a moment.
All right, my next thing is going to be China, right?
Correct. That's correct.
All right. Well, I'm gonna literally hang on. Let me come back. I'm gonna literally step away for a second.
All right. Cool. So you just got to duck out. All right. Hey, folks. All right, folks. If CBD isn't part of your wellness routine yet, now is the time to change that. It is CBD Awareness Month. That's right. April, CBD Awareness Month. And CB Distillery is going all out with a massive sale. Save up to 60% off everything. That includes their #1 best-selling relief stick for post-workout pain and their sleep gummies, which I know you guys rave about. My favorite products are the oils. I'm kind of old school. I've been using CBD for about 4 years. I started using it for interrupted sleep in 2021 when I just could not sleep through the night to save my life. And my uncle turned me on to CBD oil, and I started using that, and it helped tremendously, and I still use it to this day. They have oils. They have tinctures on their website. They also have, these are super convenient if you're just starting out. These are their soft gels. These are CBD soft gels, which are basically oil in capsule form. What's convenient about these is they're pre-measured and pre-dosed. You don't have to measure them the way you do with the oils. They're also tasteless. Just pop one in your mouth, a glass of water, washes down super easily. They come in 30 milligram doses, which is a great starter dose. I actually popped one before we came on the show today. That's why I'm light, relaxed, and funny this afternoon. I'm on my game. I got to make it a practice to do it before every show. Hey, maybe on one of the shows, I'll pop one on the show. It'll be like my Obama Flint water moment, you know, where he drinks the water. That's a good idea for next time. But yes, the oils and the soft gels are my go-to, but gummies, relief sticks, all kinds of remedies for sleep, stress, pain. It's all up to 60% off when you use code RUMBLE. RUMBLE is the code. You can also scan the QR code. This is premium quality CBD, nothing artificial, no fillers, just clean plant-based solutions that work. Whether you need to better sleep, less stress, or relief from pain after exercise, CB Distillery has a natural solution to help you. So you don't want to miss this discount. It's the perfect time to get started with CBD and stock up. So visit cbdistillery.com and use promo code RUMBLE. That's cbdistillery.com, code RUMBLE. That is cbdistillery.com. All right, beautiful. All right, where's Russell at? Did Russell step out? Is he back? There you go. You're back.
I'm back, baby.
All right, beautiful. Good timing. Good timing. Yeah, I took a CBD. I took one of these soft gels before the show.
Did you?
Yeah. Yeah. But did you not watch my read? I said that on the read. Were you not paying attention?
I told you I was stepping away.
I said one of these days I'm going to take one on the show. It'll be like my Obama Flint water moment. Does anybody have a CBD? Anybody got some CBD oil?
Okay. I'm trying to figure out the market right now. I mean, you know, Trump's of course calling for Powell to be terminated because he doesn't want to cut interest rates. But
yeah.
Okay. All right.
All right. Eric Suarez, thanks for the $5. Jeffrey Sachs' views are very similar to Bernie's. Both of them believe in Israel as a right to exist and that the only issue is Netanyahu. You guys should so have the soundbite of Joe Pesci saying, "What the fuck is this piece of shit?"
Yeah.
Oh, got that one already. Thank you. Nocturnal Human, I'm a native Mexican-American, and the corn god said California is my land, but they don't believe in Quetzalcoatl. Quetzalcoatl, or is it Quetzalcoatl?
What's a coatl?
Quetzalcoatl, yeah, I forget how you say that. But thank you, Nocturnal Human, appreciate that. Bernie's Grift, hey, everybody, did you know there's poverty in this country? There you go. Shut up about Palestine. All right, we'll keep moving along. We got China.
Okie doke. All right, let me come back. China. All right, so China strikes back. This week, China not only stopped importing Boeings, but ordered its companies to return ones that had already arrived. China just grounded Boeing jets as payback for Trump's 145% tariff on Chinese goods. Chinese officials have ordered airlines to stop all future Boeing deliveries and banned the purchase of U.S. aircraft parts. On top of that, China has cut off 6 critical rare earth minerals essential for building everything from cars and drones to missiles and semiconductors. Early signs point to a full-scale trade war. While some exemptions still cover items like smartphones and chips, a 20% pre-existing tariff remains on many critical electronics. Higher import costs could also fuel inflation, slashing consumer spending and slowing business investment. All right, let's watch a little video about this.
News today, ladies and gentlemen. China just grounded Boeing as payback for Trump's tariffs. According to Business Today, China has raised the stakes against the US. Beijing has now ordered its airlines not to take any further deliveries of Boeing jets in response to the US decision to impose 145% tariffs on Chinese goods. Beijing has also asked that Chinese carriers halt any purchases of aircraft-related equipment and parts from US companies. China has already halted exports of 6 critical rare earth minerals and magnets, which are refined and produced only within its borders. These are needed to make everything from cars, drones, missiles, and semiconductors in the face of external uncertainties. Now, in response to US tariffs, which early signs show have indeed sparked a trade war, China has insisted it will persevere through the tariff war and instead will continue to expand its circle of trade friends, even approaching India, Australia, and Saudi Arabia to form an axis against the US. President Trump has insisted the US will not back down, especially on China. Well, China has given its own warning. This is from the Chinese embassy in the US account on the 4th of March. Quote, "If war is what the US wants, be it a tariff war, a trade war, or any other type of war, we're ready to fight till the end." Now, whilst that tweet was from well over...
Okay, so doesn't look like things are going quite as planned. Let's see what we call based Chinese Matthew Miller talking about China's response. This tariff war was initiated by the U.S. and China. China took necessary countermeasures to safeguard its legitimate goals, interests. I can't read that fast. You're going to have to read it. China's position has always been clear. There are no winners in a tariff or trade war. China does not want to fight, but is not afraid of fighting. If the U.S. really wants to resolve this issue through dialogue and negotiation, it should stop exerting extreme pressure, stop threatening and blackmailing, and engage in dialogue with China on the basis of equality, respect, and mutual benefit.
No, it's not bad. It was not bad. You kept up decently well there.
Yes, it was going a little faster than I expected. So it's not just Boeing that got caught in the crossfire. NVIDIA took a $5.5 billion hit on this. NVIDIA on Tuesday said it will take a $5.5 billion financial hit after Washington placed fresh restrictions on the export of its H20 artificial intelligence chips to China in the latest escalation of a growing battle for AI dominance. NVIDIA slumped 6.87% Wednesday after tumbling during pre-market trading. The export restrictions on NVIDIA come as President Donald Trump's tariffs are roiling global markets and raising concerns about the prospects for global economic growth. The World Trade Organization on Wednesday said its expectations for global trade this year have deteriorated sharply owing to the battery of new tariffs on goods and uncertainty around future trade policy. The H20 chip, released just last year, was purposefully made to accommodate stringent U.S. export controls to China and allowed NVIDIA to continue selling to the country. The model has less computing power than the more powerful H100 AI chip, which has already been banned for sale to China. Quote, NVIDIA specifically designed the H20 to comply with U.S. exports restrictions. Now the rules change and they lost $5 billion, said Jay Hatfield, chief executive at Infrastructure Capital Advisors. So this inconsistent trade policy is costing companies a lot of money. So this video has been getting around. This is Victor Gao explaining that China cannot be intimidated into backing down from the U.S., having been around for 5,000 years, long predating the existence of the U.S.
Fully prepared to fight to the very end, because the world is big enough that the United States is not the totality of the market in the world. So if the United States wants to go in that direction of completely shutting itself out of the China market, be my guest.
Yeah, and China will lose the US market, which, as I've said, is 15%.
We don't care. We don't care. China has been here for 5,000 years. Most of the time, there was no United States, and we survived. And if the United States wants to bully China, we will deal with the situation without the United States.
We are even older than Israel. That's how long we've been around.
And we expect to survive for another 5,000 years.
When you hear Donald Trump say China wants a deal, it just doesn't know how to go about it. They're proud people. J.D. Vance talks about Chinese peasants. What do you make of their conduct in this respect?
If J.D. Vance thinks that he's dealing with the peasants in China, and I'm proud to be a descendant of the peasants, most of us are descendants of the peasants anyway, that's our tradition. We are farmers before, but now we are one of the leading industrialized economies in the world. So I'm sorry, J.D. Vance doesn't know what he's talking about. And therefore, I don't think there will be China-US dialogue unless the United States changes its attitude towards China. Deal with China as it is, show respect to China, show respect to the Chinese people, and don't try to impose your prejudice and biased view about China or about the rest of the world.
Exactly.
Yeah, this is not going the way they had
Get
planned.
your fucking shine box.
Exactly.
Love that guy.
And you know how you can tell it's not going as planned? Carolyn Levitt did her best. We're standing strong, but if you listen closely, what she's really saying is, call us. Call us.
The president has made his position on China quite clear, although I do have an additional statement that he just shared with me in the Oval Office. The ball is in China's court. China needs to make a deal with us. We don't have to make a deal with them. There's no difference between China and any other country except they are much larger. And China wants what we have, what every country wants, what we have, the American consumer. Or to put it another way, they need our money.
No, they
so
don't.
The president, again, has made it quite clear that he's open to a deal with China, but China needs to make a deal with the United States of America.
Take your 15% and wipe your ass with it. That's what they're prepared to say.
Yeah, well, this is really the tactical error that they've made. Assuming, A, that the Chinese people are not willing to deal with some pain and that they can take less pain than we can, or even that the pain will be greater for them. And increasingly, it looks like it will not. It will not. America actually needs them more than they need America. This is the core flaw in Besant's theory. Look, as long as I've been following financial news, I've been reading articles about how China's in trouble, China's on the verge of collapse, China's economy is based on overinvestment from the government. It's unsustainable. I've been hearing that China's economy is going to collapse in the next year for 10 fucking years, for 10 years. So clearly the experts here don't really understand China, or they don't want us to understand China. This is a commentator who did one of the best takes on all this that I've seen. This is Nolan Mathias. He does financial analysis. Just going to play the first minute of his summation here.
So this is crazy. Imagine you're the most dominant player in the game. You're so dominant that nobody even questions it. Nobody's willing to challenge you because they know that if they do, they're going to lose. But one day you wake up and you decide, hey, just for fun, I'm not only going to challenge the number 2 player, but I'm going to challenge everybody. Not only am I going to challenge them, I'm going to bully them into playing the game the way I want it to be played. But you realize quickly that there's a catch. All the cards that you thought you held, it turns out you don't actually hold. And at the same time that you're realizing that you don't have the dominance that you thought you did, everybody else is realizing it as well. This is exactly what's happening right now with the US and the trade war that it's fighting with China. And in a scenario where just a few months ago, the US seemed to have all the global economic cards, it turns out they don't. Because over the last 20 years, they gave up an important thing, and that was their leverage.
Okay, so he goes on in the video to explain that after China joined the WTO, we outsourced all of our manufacturing to China and became an almost entirely consumer and services-based economy. You can't just flip a switch and go back to that. China has all the manufacturing in their country now. They can continue to manufacture, and they're just going to sell their goods to other places. Now, are they going to make less money? Yeah, for a while. They're willing to do that. They're willing to make that sacrifice. Are Americans willing to make that sacrifice? And if they do, what would they be making it for? Because as he also explains in the video, and we actually got into this because Lutnick and Dissent both gave away the game. They both started talking when they were asked about whether you could find the labor force in America to do these factory jobs. They started talking about AI and robotics. So even if they did build these factories here, those factory jobs are not going to come back with them. They're mostly going to be automated. Not only that, you know, people didn't like working in factories. That only became a good job through unions, through years, decades of fighting with management. And even then, nobody liked working in a factory. Nobody said, I hope my kids work in a factory. But it became something that could provide a decent living, at least, where you had decent benefits. These guys are dismantling the NLRB.
Right.
They're viciously anti-union. So even if those factory jobs did come back, and they won't, because they're going to build, if they did build these factories, they'd be smart factories, which don't need as much labor. But even if they did, what do you think the working conditions would be in these factories under this regime? What do you think their vision is? That you're going to have those old school United Auto Workers kinds of benefits and protections? Absolutely not. Beyond that, and this is where he really makes a good point, that we need China more than they need us. What is this doing to farmers? We already know. There's already been a lot of reporting on this, where you got farmers who have lost hundreds of thousands of dollars overnight. We're not talking Monsanto, where they can absorb that. We're talking about independent farmers whose main market has been China. China has created reciprocal tariffs that are going to make it completely unfeasible to export to them. You combine that with cutting off the rare earth minerals that are needed, like by Elon, to build his cars. You combine that with the fact that by all accounts, they're making better EVs than Teslas, which other countries around the world are not tariffing at the level we are. We have 100% tariff on it. Europe tariffs them, but at like 25%. We're tariffing them at 100%. That's the point he's making there. We showed our hand, and it turned out to be a weak hand. It's a terrible miscalculation. We thought the need for the American consumer would be so great that everyone would have to bow to it. But China, you want to talk about 5D chess. Everyone says Trump's playing 5D chess. No, China's been playing 5D chess. China actually, this is something else he gets into in the video. When that happened in Trump's first term, when he created the tariffs the first time, they took steps to ensure that if something like this happened, they would not be as vulnerable as they were then. So they've actually diversified the countries that they export to. The U.S. does not represent as large a percentage of what they export to other countries as it did in 2016 because they anticipated something like this might happen. They played 5D chess. They prepared themselves for an eventuality like this. Trump just went in and said, yeah, the Americans spend money like drunken sailors. Who's going to turn that down? When you combine that with the fact that we have made ourselves such a repulsive, disgusting country to most of the world, yeah, Americans, this is the calm before the storm. It's just they've only been in for a couple of months. Like the real consequences of this have not beset the economy yet. But when you take this as a whole, it's going to cause a level of economic collapse, the likes of which Americans certainly haven't seen since the 30s, and maybe not even then.
Yeah, I mean, this is far from my strong suit as an issue, and I feel like I'm a broken record because I've had to say the same thing over and over again, because this was very obvious, even to someone who knows very little about this subject, someone who has not studied this kind of stuff very closely. It was completely obvious that this is how it was going to play out. For the very sort of core reason that China is not the mirror image of this country. Right. You know, you make these kinds of threats against us. You mentioned Howard Lutnick. Howard Lutnick would get, you have to call them back. We're going to lose 15%. You'd have a meltdown. They don't worship money the way that we do. They're not the greedy pigs that we are. If you look at that first video you played, I don't know if it's in the queue anymore. You may have gotten rid of it. That woman sitting behind the backdrop of a city that looks like it's either in outer space or 300 years in the future. No, that's the kind of city you can build when you don't prioritize empire and bloodshed and war, when you're not so driven by the kind of maniacal greed that drives us. And the flip side of that is that you can endure periods of loss from time to time. It does not scare them. What that guy said, it's exactly the answer
they have
I
a
would
social
expect.
cohesion we don't have.
Yeah. Exactly. I mean, that's exactly the answer I would expected him to give. That's the answer I have playing in my head that they would give. You know, they just don't rely on us in the same way because their calculation is not the same as ours. If your calculation is we always need more every day, every single day from now until the end of time, at that point you may be deterred by the kinds of things that we are trying to leverage against them. That's not the case with them. It's very obvious that's not the case with them, which is why I said a million times, I'm a broken record on this. It's too late for this. It's too late. They saw this coming a while ago. That's what you said, right? Really, since 9/11, they've probably seen this coming. If that didn't do it, what? You don't think the Ukraine war did it? What, you think they partnered with Russia for no reason? You don't think they saw this coming? You think they're afraid of us? You think you think they can't tell themselves and their people, hey, we're going to tighten the belt for a little while? It's not a problem for them. It's not a problem. It's a price that I'm sure they're happy to pay it. And who could blame them? Right. Who could blame them?
To get away from us?
Yeah. If you could not have anything to do with us and not rely on us at all for a temporary period of less revenue, who wouldn't do that? Who wouldn't do that if you thought you could sustain? You're talking about an ancient civilization. You're not talking about a bunch of fucking colonists, gangsters who rebelled against the king a few hundred years ago and are here to just stuff their pockets. No, you're dealing with something very different in China. And of course, they're going to come out on top. And I've said it over and over again. This country is done. It's finished. It's over. It's over. It was too late to try this. Much too late.
Well, and if you saw, Kim did an excellent piece about this that kind of went viral about the whole China subject. And she has a video of someone in China saying, hey, your elite sold you out.
Right.
They sold you out. It's not our fault. It's not China's fault that they created policies that sent all of your factories to us. And we made money and they made money. But with their money, they bought yachts.
Right.
With our money, we put it back into our society. Now you want to blame China? It's not our fault. That's your leaders did that to you. Exactly right. And now they're going about this cockamamie scheme to try to reverse it. And honestly, in my opinion, I don't think they're even trying to reverse it. I keep saying this. They're trying to kill off a large portion of the population, but I think they want to create a walled fortress to protect themselves and their privileges. That's why they want manufacturing back here, because they don't want to have to deal with anybody, but they're selling it to workers by saying you're going to get jobs. They know they're not going to get jobs. That's why they say it'll be fine. We have AI. We'll have smartphones. They fucking know those jobs aren't coming back. So why do they want it?
Well, of course.
They want it for themselves. They're building a fortress for oligarchs, not for you.
Yeah, and to your point earlier, even if they did bring them back, what made factory work viable for the middle class and the working class was the labor movement. And these people are doing everything they can to crush the labor movement. So what makes you think those are going to be great jobs?
You'll be going back to like 19th century factory work.
You'll get paid $17 an hour with minimal to no benefits. Yeah, exactly. All right. We will move on along here. Kuznetsky Bassane, thanks for the $49.99. Let's do a cowbell over here for Kuznetsky Bassane, or let's hit the sound drop.
Yeah. I was like reaching for it.
Yeah. Oops. Where am I?
I got it.
Cool. All right. Awesome. Thank you for that. Kuznetsky Bassane says you guys are so worth the dough. Appreciate that. Very much. Thank you, Kuznetsky Bassane. By the way, Russell, we're going to skip my segment because we're running pretty long here, so we're going to go right to Van Hollen, so get ready for that.
All right. You got to give me a few minutes.
Oh, well, yeah, I am.
Some.
Yeah. All right. Brad Gilbert, thanks for the $2. These the same U.S. consumers mad about egg prices. That's right, Brad Gilbert. Appreciate that. Thank you very much. All right. What else we got over here? We got... Nocturnal Human, Bernie's Grift. Oh, I got that one already. I went to the LA Sanders rally. I don't like Sanders, but there were many good speeches from union people at the rally. Well, that's good. Thank you for that. Hillary Hinton, random thought, dirtbags. Michael Rappaport didn't exist. Israel would have invented him. Sorry about the dirtbags thing. Thank you very much. John M. in Minnesota, Rubio reminds you of when Blinken tweeted out a blurb on a day reserved for celebrating international journalistic freedom. Yes, thank you for that. Appreciate that. All right, folks, we're going to do the scroll here. We're going to take a little break. In fact, here, you know what, Russell? We can do, we'll do Van Hollen first, since that's a double. And then I got my last segment here, which we'll do. Just to call a little bit of an audible here. All right, there you go. And here we go. All right, folks. So if you like us and you want to support us, by far the best way to do that is to become a member. You can become a member at patreon.com/DoDissidents. You can also go to dodissidents.substack.com, or you can join our locals at dodissidents.locals.com. Perks of membership include your name up in lights here on the patron scroll. You also get a live stream access to our pre-recorded full-length interviews, as well as full replays, ad-free replays of every live stream emailed directly to you the day after they air live. So if you miss a show and you want to watch it back with no ads, just like you would watch it through with no ads on a live stream, you get that as part of your paid membership. You also get 2 bonus live streams per month, 1 movie club live stream and 1 content and call-in live stream. So we do our best to make it as worthwhile as we possibly can. You guys are absolutely the backbone of the show. You help tech-proof the operation and censor-proof the operation. Our video on Miss Rachel, which got about 50,000 views, they went in and demonetized it about a week after it was published. Yeah.
You didn't tell me that.
Yeah, they just did that. I just got notification of that. Now, I don't know if that means that we don't get paid for the ads that ran on it. We'll have to ask our YouTube rep about that, but that's life as a YouTuber. You know, they could just retroactively demonetize a video. So that'd be like if you're going to work and you work a 12 to 8, and they say, hey, you know what? A week later, they say, hey, last Thursday, those middle 2 hours that you put in there, we don't think that was up to our monetization standards, so we're going to withdraw your pay for those 2 hours of work. That's what it comes down to, because it takes a couple hours from preparation to performing the piece to editing to doing the graphics to publishing and uploading and everything. That's what it is. And sometimes they can just dock your pay like that. And so the people who protect us against stuff like that are the people on the scroll. You guys are what make it happen here. We literally could not do the show without you. So thank you, everybody, very much for signing up. You could sign up at dodissidents.locals.com. You could sign up for $5 a month or $50 for the entire year. It helps tremendously to keep this project afloat. We could not do it without you guys. You guys are absolutely the backbone of the show. That is no exaggeration. So thank you very much for your support. Okay, let's see here. Beautiful. Perfect. All right. Rentier Oligarch says some accounts on X showed satellite images of Seacott, the El Salvadoran prison, that suggest it might be something worse. Trump likely can't return Abrego Garcia because he isn't with us anymore. Well, he has been confirmed to be alive. I saw some of those photos.
Confirmed
as well.
how, though?
Well, they've said that he's alive. I mean,
they've said he's alive.
Yeah. Yeah.
Nobody's seen him.
Well, they didn't let him see him. I hate to be so vague, but YouTube won't let me send the super chat that's more explicit. The satellite images suggest something from the 30s Germany. Yeah, no, I know which images you're talking about. I know which images you are referencing there. I've seen them too. Let's see here. I am the owl. The right play here is to piggyback on this Orwellian movement by labeling taxes, health insurance premiums, and all rent mortgage payments as anti-Semitic. Now we can deport those from our lives. There you go. Absolutely. All right. Are you set?
As set as I'm gonna be. Hopefully everything's right. It's a lot going on here.
All right. Very good. Go ahead. Oh, wait a minute. Before you do, we are at 710 likes. There we go.
This chair is easier to bang my head than the one at home.
There you go.
Computer chairs have like the neck rest on them.
Yeah.
Chris Van Hollen went down. Hollen,
yeah.
Chris Van Hollen. His name should be Chris Van Hollen.
Yeah.
That would be cool. So he went down to El Salvador and met with the vice president because I think Bukele was cutting a coke deal down there. So only the vice president was available. But this is what he said to the press.
Now, the courts of the United States have said there's no evidence to support the charge that he's part of MS-13. So I asked the vice president whether or not El Salvador has any evidence that he's part of MS-13 or has committed a crime. So I asked the vice president if Abrego Garcia has not committed a crime and the U.S. courts have found that he was illegally taken for the United States, and the government of El Salvador has no evidence that he was part of MS-13. Why is El Salvador continuing to hold him in Seacott? And his answer was that the Trump administration is paying El Salvador, the government of El Salvador, to keep him at Seacott. And I pointed out that neither the government of El Salvador nor the Trump administration has presented evidence to support the claim that he's committed any kind of criminal acts. And so why not release Abrego Garcia today? And he said what President Bukele said the other day at the White House, which that El Salvador can't smuggle Mr. Abrego Garcia into the United States. And I said, I'm not asking him to smuggle Mr. Abrego Garcia into the United States. I'm simply asking him to open the door of Seacott and let this innocent man walk out. And I pointed out that the Attorney General of the United States, Pam Bondi, has said that the United States would send a plane to El Salvador to pick him up. And why did she do that? Because the Supreme Court of the United States, in a ruling of 9-0, has said that the Trump administration has to facilitate his return to the United States. Now, there's no evidence that the Trump administration is complying with that order. There's no evidence that they're complying with that order. In fact, the United States Embassy here has told me they've received no direction from the Trump administration to help facilitate his release. So the Trump administration is clearly in violation of American court orders. But that still leaves the question, why is the government of El Salvador continuing to imprison a man where they have no evidence he's committed any crime and they've not been provided any evidence from the United States that he's committed a crime?
Okay, so whatever they want to tell you, the man has been accused of being a member of MS-13. It has not been proven in any court of law. As Van Hollen points out here, well, okay, he hasn't even been charged with a crime in El Salvador, so why are they keeping him in their dungeon? Why are they keeping him in this place if he's not charged with a crime? He hasn't been brought to trial. As far as I know, there isn't even a trial pending to prove that he's a member of MS-13. Now, seemingly in response to this, the White House dug out documents. New documents detail government's case that mistakenly deported man was a gang member. And I just want to make this clear before we get into this. They could produce a fucking encyclopedia of documents. The man was not proven to be a member of this gang in any court of law. In fact, the accusations against him were so circumstantial that he was given a hold on his deportation order and a work permit, not prosecuted for any crime in the U.S. or in El Salvador. None. If this man is this gangbanger, where are the charges? Where are the crimes that he has committed? And once again, the accusation against him that he was a member of MS-13 in Western New York, it's a little implausible given that he never set foot in the state. How would you become a member of a gang without ever setting foot in the state? But okay.
And also, like you said, evidence is not to be presented to the media. Evidence is to be presented to a judge.
Court. Okay, so here is Washington's favorite sugar baby since the D.C. madam died of natural causes, laying out the government's case.
Abrego Garcia was originally arrested. He was wearing a sweatshirt with rolls of money covering the ears, mouth, and eyes of presidents on various currency denominations. This is a known MS-13 gang symbol of hear no evil, speak no evil, see no evil. Abrego Garcia was also arrested with two other well-known members of the vicious MS-13 gang. And two separate judges found that Abrego Garcia was a member of MS-13, and that finding has never been disputed. And just this morning, it was revealed through Maryland court documents that Abrego Garcia's wife petitioned for an order of protection against him for 2 instances of domestic violence in May of 2021. And here is the order right here. The court ordered that the respondent committed the following acts of abuse. Once in May of 2021, assault in any degree. And on May 4th of 2021, he punched and scratched his wife, ripped off her shirt, and grabbed and bruised her. This is from a court in Maryland. So not only are Democrats rushing to defend an illegal criminal foreign terrorist gang member, but also an apparent woman beater. To set all of that aside, the basic fact that he was illegally inside our country and had a lawful deportation order made him subject to removal back to his home country of El Salvador. And if he ever ends up back in the United States, he would immediately be deported again. Nothing will change the fact that Abrego Garcia will never be a Maryland father. He will never live in the United States of America again. And the United States Supreme Court ruled unanimously that the President of the United States and the Secretary of State could not be compelled to forcibly retrieve this citizen of El Salvador who is currently locked up in a maximum security prison in his home country due to his MS-13 membership.
Okay, so it was not found by any judge that he was a member of MS-13. The police said that he was. In fact, the officer who accused him of that was suspended from duty a few months later. This is from the police report that she's talking about. He was wearing a Chicago Bulls hat and hoodie with rolls of money covering the eyes, ears, and mouth of the presidents on the separate denominations. Officers know such clothing to be indicative of the Hispanic gang culture. The meaning of the clothing is to represent ver or y calar, or see no evil, hear no evil, and say no evil. Wearing the Chicago Bulls hat represents that they are a member in good standing with the MS-13. Officers contacted a past proven and reliable source of information who advised Kilmar Armando Abrego Garcia is an active member of MS-13 with the Western Clique. The confidential source further advised that he is the rank of Chiqueo with the moniker of Chele. Okay, so once again, the place to prove that he's an MS-13 member based on these claims would be in a court, which apparently they were not successfully able to do, given that he had a hold put on his deportation order based on credible evidence that he was actually being persecuted by a different gang, Barrio 18. This is from his attorneys in response to this. Quote, Mr. Abrego Garcia has never been convicted of a crime. If the government believes there is a legitimate case to be made, it should present that case in a court of law and have a judge review and decide his fate, not on social media, his lawyer said in a statement. We look forward to the government complying with the court's order and facilitating Mr. Abrego Garcia's immediate release from custody in El Salvador. We will continue to fight for our client's safe return and to ensure his constitutional rights are fully restored. Here's an example of the crackerjack police work upon which they're putting this man possibly for life in a dungeon. This is a soccer player who was deported as a gang member because he had a tattoo from the soccer club, which has a crown on it. This is the kind of police work that they're basing these claims on. Oh, Matt, this guy looks like a real tough character, man. I can see why they felt a need to deport him to a supermax prison. Gay Venezuelan makeup artist, again, because he had a tattoo honoring his grandmother that they interpreted as meaning that he's in a gang. This is why these things are supposed to be decided in court, not by whatever fascist outback ICE agents you have making these kinds of determinations. About 90% of migrants sent to Salvador lacked a U.S. criminal record. So it doesn't look like they're rounding up the worst of the worst, or that you can in any way trust this administration to honestly assess the risks of the people that they are committing these horrific crimes against. So Homeland Security, they tweeted out about the accusation of domestic violence. His wife commented on this, quote, after surviving domestic violence in a previous relationship, I acted out of caution after a disagreement with Kilmar by seeking a civil protective order in case things escalated. Vasquez Sura said in a statement Wednesday, things did not escalate, and I decided not to follow through with the civil court process. No one is perfect, and no marriage is perfect. That is not a justification for ICE's action of abducting him and deporting him to a country where he was supposed to be protected from deportation, she added. Of course not. I mean, you want to go to a court and make a case that he's an undesirable alien and get a court order to deport him. Well, that's what you do. That's what you do. There is no constitutional grounds for doing this. The administration itself admitted this was an error. So coming back now and arguing that they had a legal basis to do it is contradicting their own statement. They admitted that it was an administrative mistake.
Right.
This is from a blogger, Steve Skojek. Were charges filed? Are you planning on sending anyone involved in a domestic abuse incident to a foreign supermax prison without the benefit of a trial? Do you plan to produce actual evidence that he's a member of MS-13? This is just post hoc rationalization of sending a man to life in prison without ever having been convicted of a crime. This is not what I voted for. This is why this tweet jumped out at me. This is a Trump voter. This is a Trump voter saying, hey, man, this is not what I voted for. I did not vote for the complete suspension of the Constitution. And here's an attorney who's represented domestic violence victims. I've represented many victims of DV in similar civil protection cases. These are not criminal proceedings. The legal standard is lower. The evidence is different. There's no criminal penalty. Stop playing games and trying to mislead people. Bring this man home to his wife and kids. Meanwhile, the Trump administration, Abrego Garcia's lawyers, and an appeals court judge continue to litigate the Supreme Court's instruction that the government facilitate his release. The Trump administration Wednesday afternoon filed an appeal of U.S. District Judge Paula Zinnis's order last Thursday to the Fourth U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals, in which she directed the Trump administration to, quote, take all available steps to facilitate the return of Abrego Garcia to the United States as soon as possible. Now, this is Chris Van Hollen basically summing up what the real issue is, which they are taking great pains to distract from. For the same reason, assume that he's in MS-13, which I do not, but make that assumption. It really does not change the underlying legal threat that allowing the executive to take an action like this represents.
Back meetings here in El Salvador with our team from the American Embassy, with the Vice President of El Salvador, with human rights groups. And the entire purpose has been to bring Abrego Garcia home because U.S. courts have determined that he was illegally abducted from the United States and now finds himself in the most notorious prison in El Salvador. The Supreme Court, 9-0, has told the Trump administration they must facilitate his return home. They've refused to do it. So I called upon the government of El Salvador to do it unless they can provide evidence that he's been involved in MS-13. They said they had no evidence. So this is not about MS-13.
No evidence in his home country. But we have evidence. They don't have evidence. This is the country he's from. They have no evidence he's in MS-13, which again begs the question, so why are they holding him in prison? Why hold him in prison?
I know President Trump wants to make this about gang violence. I have been fighting MS-13 probably longer than Donald Trump even knew about MS-13. I care about every victim of crime. That's why we have a court system to hold people accountable when they commit crimes, to make sure that they get the punishment they deserve. We also have a court system to make sure that people who have not committed crimes or not been convicted of crimes are not disappeared out of the United States and sent to a notorious prison in El Salvador, like Abrego Garcia. This is simply about letting him have his day in court. We use the courts to make sure that we don't convict people who are not guilty and that we convict those who are.
Okay. Now, you know, the ACLU very famously went to court to defend the right of Nazis to march in Skokie, which was a neighborhood that had a lot of Holocaust survivors in it. Before we had this term, it was a troll. The Nazis specifically wanted to march there. The head of the ACLU at that time was Ira Glazer, who you could probably tell from the name was not a Gentile. Why did they fight for their right to march through Skokie? Because they understood once you set a precedent for impinging on the speech rights of Nazis, that can very easily be turned against yourself. In the end, this is not even about Abrego Garcia. What you think about Abrego Garcia is irrelevant. Now, you think this can't happen to you? Well, let's look back at what Trump said just a few days ago to Bukele right in front of the cameras.
demanded, the people wanted to change over, and they wanted to. He demanded, they love you, they love what you do. Well, you know, I'm not sure it's important. I want them to do, homegrown criminals next. Yeah.
The homegrowns.
The next.
The homegrowns.
The homegrowns. You got to build about 5 more places. Yeah, that's fair. All right. It's not big enough. No, yeah, come on. So this is a much different office than you remember.
So who's going to decide who the homegrown criminals are? Because they've already demonstrated they don't feel compelled to put people through a court process to decide that they're criminals. And they're also making the very terrifying argument that once they've transported you to another country, they no longer have any legal strictures on what they can do, right? Well, at that point, you can grab anybody. So, hey, you might be able to talk me into this. If what we're going to start doing is just grabbing people who are accused of heinous crimes and sending them to CCOT, maybe we can start with Donald Trump. Katie Johnson was the 13-year-old girl that Trump and Epstein blanked. She dropped her lawsuits because of death threats to she and her family. Well, by this standard, we should be able to send Donald Trump to CCOT, right? I mean, this is probably more credible than the accusation that Abrego Garcia was a member of MS-13. This is before most people knew who Jeffrey Epstein was. I think she filed this in 2015, 2016. So it's not like Jeffrey Epstein's name was all over the news at that time. It's pretty funny that she connected Trump and Epstein when she made these claims. So, hey, man, by this standard, shouldn't we be deporting Donald Trump to CCOT? If we're gonna take the worst of the worst, that would be the worst of the worst. Somebody who did this, huh? You don't have to prove it in court, right? Right? Well, just the accusation's enough, according to Trump. Here's Glenn on this whole subject, including Judge Boasberg is filing claims of contempt of court. A few facts, regardless of what side of the due process deportation debate you're on, raised by Vance. Oh, he's responding to J.D. Vance here. 1, only reason Abrego Garcia case is a controversy is an immigration court blocked his deportation, and Trump administration admitted he was mistakenly picked up by ICE. SCOTUS ruled 9-0 that U.S. must facilitate his return. 3, ordinary deportation, sending someone back to their country of origin, are very quick and easy. It's done by a deportation court inside DOJ. 4, that's radically different than sending people to life in prison in a third country they have nothing to do with, based on allegations of criminality that are never proven. Due process is raised only with that. 5, SCOTUS also just ruled 9-0, including Thomas, Alito, etc., that anyone Trump administration wants to remove as an alien enemy under the Alien Enemies Act first gets a habeas hearing to contest charges of gang membership. 6, a Trump-appointed judge in Texas then, based on SCOTUS ruling, ordered AEA deportations of Venezuelans to El Salvador to cease pending a hearing. These aren't left-wing activist judges doing this. It's also right-wing judges, the ones most popular among the right, upholding the Bill of Rights, which has applied to everyone in the U.S., not just citizens, for at least 150 years. Yes, exactly. They want you arguing about Abrego Garcia's character. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter if he's the worst son of a bitch on the planet. That is not the issue, just like it was not the issue whether you like Nazis having the right to march in Skokie. It's a question of protecting these rights so that we are protected. And you don't have to wildly speculate, what if this is applied to American citizens? Trump is saying straight out, he said this multiple times in the last week, that he wants to be able to do this to U.S. citizens. You think that's not going to come back and affect you? Okay, maybe not under this administration because you're on their side. You got the red hat. What happens when there's a different administration? And now you're one of the people who has all over your social media that you supported the political enemies of the new regime.
Right. Exactly. Well, that was a point that, yeah, I was definitely going to make because, you know, it really isn't about Abrego Garcia. It is about setting a precedent. Like, don't you think you'd feel more comfortable living in a country where he comes back and evidence is presented in court, and if there's evidence that he's a horrible, violent gang member, then he's sent away? Wouldn't you feel better about that? So you, just because obviously it matters to him as a person and to his family that you get this right. Obviously, I'm not discounting that. I'm not saying that doesn't matter. But also, if that's the precedent, don't you feel more secure about yourself in your own life and where you live, as opposed to this, where you're just making the argument that no, based on everything that the administration is claiming, which is based on police reports by cops who we know have fucked up very, very similar cases like this in the past, he should just stay there, no questions asked, forget about it. And yeah, to your point, yeah, what happens, assuming you think, well, I'm on the good side of Donald Trump, so this will never happen to me. Well, what happens when the rainbow fascists come back into power?
Exactly.
Just as George W. Bush really paved the way for Barack Obama, and Barack Obama paved the way for Donald Trump, and Trump paved the way for Biden, and Biden paved the way for Trump again. Trump is paving the way for the Democrats to come back pretty strong. Pretty strong. They're already outperforming 2024 by 15 points on average in every race we've run since then. So when that happens, and the next rainbow fascist woke skull turns their sights on you, aren't you going to want some due process for yourself?
Exactly.
And don't think that won't happen. The Biden administration went after the African People's Socialist Party. Scott Ritter was arrested, or not arrested, but his home was, pardon me, that's wrong. But his home was raided under suspicion that he was a foreign agent. What, you think they won't come for you? You don't think the Democrats are dangerous in that respect? Of course they are. Of course they are. Do you want to give them this kind of precedent?
These are people who in polls wanted to put the unvaccinated in camps.
Right. Well, that was not 50% of that. It was jobs. It wasn't most in camps. But yes, a significant enough percentage, yeah, to scare you, right? Wasn't an unnoticeable minority, certainly. So yeah, this is about setting a precedent about where you want to live. Do you want to live in a place where you could just be rounded up and shipped somewhere, potentially for life, no questions asked? Or do you want to know that you live in a place where if you are accused of something, you will have a day in court where you can argue against whatever evidence they present against you? That's a society that I would think most people would want to live in. The short-sightedness of this, on top of the mean-spiritedness of it, is just amazing.
Yeah, it's amazing. It seems like at one time Americans had a better idea of inviolable rights that are nonpartisan. Now it seems like every time a faction wins, their supporters think they're going to be in power forever. And there's no danger to eroding constitutional rights because it's only going to happen to the other people.
Right. Exactly. All right. China Shill says, are you ready for China to own the commercial airline business? Cheap, low emissions transcontinental flight, boys. I can see it now. Thank you, China Shill. Noah Goop, for every fat person in America, China has 2 factories. The American century of humiliation will be glorious. Thank you, Noah. For Zen Saki, just mentioned you guys on Twitter with some AI generated stuff. I don't call it art that I thought you might like. All right. Well, thank you for that. Appreciate that. We'll take a look. It's Vito P. Trump, we don't need no stinking earth minerals or badges. Cancer sucks. You guys rock. Thank you, Vito. Appreciate that.
Thank you, man.
Very much. Mussolini's darling Maloney actually set the precedent of sending migrants to third countries. She deported them to camps in Albania. In a way, it proves the literally fascist premise of that solution. Indeed. Thank you for that, Victor. Appreciate that. Skyman, thank you for the $5 over on YouTube. Welcome to your backward technocratic dark age. Or in other words, you get what you deserve, you fucking Yankee. China, probably. Thank you. All right, we got a B part to this, do we not?
At least we don't put slugs on pizza.
Exactly, yeah.
Motherfuckers. Yeah. All right. Oh, so we are going to skip yours?
Well, you have the B part of this, right? Don't you have the Morin part?
We do, yeah.
Yeah, go ahead. Go straight to
Is
that.
that how you? Yeah, it's not how you did it on the sheet.
No, yeah. I just considered this one piece.
All right, hang on. All right. So you might remember when Donald Trump said he prefers soldiers that didn't get captured regarding John McCain. Everyone thought it was over for him, but he just kept doubling and tripling down on it. That's what they're going to do here. It does not matter how many people raise the constitutional issues, including, as Glenn Greenwald pointed out in the last segment, extremely conservative judges. They're trying to spin the Supreme Court decision as 9-0 in their favor. No. It is 9-0 against their contention that they don't have an obligation to return this person. The hesitation is whether the Constitution provides for the courts to force them to do that, given that now it involves a third party country. But the principle, they were completely united on. So they have to distract by exploiting a poor woman who lost her daughter. So here's Carolyn Levitt talking about that the night before she brought her out on a stage.
Media outrage over the deportation of Abrego Garcia, an MS-13 El Salvadorian illegal alien criminal who is hiding in Maryland, has been nothing short of despicable. Based on the sensationalism of many of the people in this room, you would think we deported a candidate for Father of the Year. That's because, unfortunately, many in this country care more about this quote-unquote Maryland father, a legal alien MS-13 gang member, than a Maryland mother and an American citizen who was brutally murdered at the hands of a different illegal alien. Of course, I am referring to Rachel Morin. And if you didn't see yesterday, a Maryland jury found illegal alien Victor Antonio Martinez Hernandez guilty of murdering Rachel Morin in August of 2023. She was a 37-year-old mother of 5 who was jogging in an otherwise safe community northeast of Baltimore when this monster ambushed, strangled, and beat her to death before stuffing her brutalized body in a tunnel drain. The Morin family finally got justice yesterday, but they will never get Rachel back. Our hearts go out to Rachel's family, her 5 children, and her mother, Patty, who has suffered the unimaginable loss of her daughter.
Okay, now I just have to mention. Notice she says the emotional manipulation of this is incredible. She says right there, yes, this woman, Rachel Morin, was killed. The monster that she's referring to is a different person from Abrego Garcia. It's
Doesn't
a different person. She just, she says those one after another to link in the public mind Abrego Garcia to this murder, even though he did not do it. The man who did it was convicted. He was just convicted. So you had a trial, you had evidence, and you had a conviction. Right? That's the difference between this case and the Abrego Garcia case. But the trick of lumping them together is the same trick that George Bush pulled after 9/11, where they never came out and said Saddam knocked down the World Trade Center. But they mentioned Saddam and Al-Qaeda side by side enough to, by the time they invaded the Iraq, the majority of Americans thought that he did.
Yeah. Also, we talked about this a little on RBN last night. They don't really care about talking to anyone other than their base. And when you look at the things they say, there's literally nothing that Carolyn Levitt could say at that mic that they would not repeat. Absolutely nothing. These points of constitutional law, they don't care. They don't care. What do you think? Most Nazis were smart? Those are not smart people. Those are always people who feel disenfranchised in some way, socially, economically. They feel isolated. They feel displaced. And for them, just joining a cult, that's enough. And what are the rules of a cult? You don't contradict the doctrines. You don't contradict the doctrines. Whatever the leaders tell you, you're going to repeat. All they have to do is give them some very emotional stuff that they can point to make an argument that has absolutely nothing to do with the conversation, and they're very good at it. They're flooding the zone. Oh, Chris Van Hollen goes down there. He wants to talk about constitutional issues. You know what? We're going to grab a grieving mother and exploit her grief for political advantage. And all of the morons who think that we actually give a flying fuck about this mother or them or anybody else, and we're not just using these people as scapegoats to cover over the fact that we're dismantling what little remains of your economic prospects in this country, keeping you focused on these immigrants for as long as we can. These people are not going to question any of this. They're just going to repeat it. As I say this, I can see the comment section now. You know, every time we do one of these stories, man, it brings out a lot of people who are emotionally and mentally broken. And you know that within 6 months, 12 months at the most, they're going to find out they've been had, but it's going to be way too late. So the next day, she brings out this poor woman who's grieving for her daughter to horrifically exploit her pain.
And sad that Senator Van Hollen and the Democrats applauding his trip to El Salvador today are incapable of having any shred of common sense or empathy for their own constituents and our citizens. Nobody knows this more than the woman standing to my right, Patty Morin, whose beautiful daughter Rachel was brutally maimed and murdered at the hands of an illegal alien in August of 2023. Patty no longer has her daughter because of the failed Democrat Party's open border, and these are policies that President Trump is bringing an end to. Patty should not have to be here today, but she is, and we are grateful and we are honored for her willingness and her request to share her powerful story with the world. Thank you, Patty, for being here.
Okay, so this is some of what she said.
Why are we not protecting the American citizens? It's just common sense. Why are we not protecting our children? And to have a senator from Maryland who didn't even acknowledge or barely acknowledged my daughter and the brutal death that she endured, leaving her 5 children without a mother and now a grandbaby without a grandmother, so that he can use my taxpayer money to fly to El Salvador to bring back someone that's not even an American citizen. Why does that person have more right than I do, or my daughter, or my grandchildren? I don't understand this. Thank you.
Okay, look, I just have to say, they don't have more right than you or your daughter or your grandchildren. I'm not trying to get into a tit for tat. This woman has endured a pain that I don't wish upon anybody. It's absolutely horrific and horrible what happened to her daughter and her entire family now. But this is the manipulation. This is the manipulation that immigrants have special privileges that Americans don't. That is the core grievance at the heart of this entire issue, which is why it is very, very powerful and very, very politically potent. Now, the putting her up on a stage as the Abrego Garcia case is going on is meant to link in the public mind what happened to this woman's daughter at the hands of someone who we know is guilty. And so we're all for punishing that person to the fullest extent of the law, deporting them, fine, whatever you want to do. But we're linking that to a guy who has not been accused, much less charged, of any such crime. That is what the Trump administration's motive is in bringing her on stage for this and talking directly about Chris Van Hollen, who went to El Salvador to try and retrieve a man who has not even been wrongfully accused, has not been accused of any violent crime. It's extremely manipulative. Extremely manipulative.
Well, of course, and the just carelessness with which they're treating this woman's trauma and grief for political purposes is just absolutely disgusting. They know, this case has absolutely nothing to do with Abrego Garcia, but they know that their target audience won't care. That's what I'm saying. That's what this is all about. So at the end here, Ms. Levitt had a message for the reporters.
I want to say that as a mother and as an American citizen, the president and our entire team, and I hope people in this room are grateful for your willingness to come here and your request to share your daughter's story. And I think the country hears you loud and clear. So thank you. Does anyone have any questions for Patty or for me? No?
I have a question.
No? Anybody? Okay. We'll see you all later.
That was either
President will be on
CNN or
dinner
the
later.
AP.
Right.
Thank you for being here this morning. I really appreciate you.
Thank you.
I'm so sorry for your
loss.
Thank you. Please tell the truth. Exactly. Tell the truth.
Yeah.
Tell how violent it really is. This is about protecting our children. It's more than just politics or votes or just anything. It's about national security, protecting Americans, protecting our children. Thank you. And thank you for listening. Thank you for being here.
Well, look, I have no idea. I don't think anybody does what this woman's politics were before she suffered such a horrible loss. Obviously, she's in a position where she's very easy to emotionally manipulate. You know, you've lost your child in this unimaginably horrible way. The literal president of the United States tells you that he really cares. Hey, and by the way, you want to come speak at this thing about what happened to you because we can prevent this from happening to other people this way. To tar immigrants as being inherently, and that's what this is. I mean, it goes beyond Abrego Garcia. You know, you're saying that immigrants inherently represent a greater danger when we know statistically they're less likely to commit crimes, which makes sense because you don't want to get picked up by the cops if you're an immigrant, right? It's like they did a study that if you actually do stop and frisk in white neighborhoods, you're more likely to find drugs. Makes sense because you're in a white neighborhood, you don't expect to get stopped and frisked.
Right.
You're in a black neighborhood, that's a possibility. You're going to be much more hesitant to walk around with drugs. So she did get, she got an Oval Office meeting. Let's take a look at that real quick.
Beautiful. She's a beautiful woman. She's been through hell. She's been through hell, right?
Oh, yes.
Your daughter's looking down proud of you. You know that. Just keep it going.
I know.
Keep it going.
Like you said,
Stay with that one.
it's like you said, we have a purpose.
It's a purpose. She's proud of you.
You know, this reminded me of a story we did earlier this week. You know, Donald Trump did a whole event in January in North Carolina where he set up a whole podium and had people come out to tell their stories. I wonder what those people would say in front of a microphone after this week. Trump denied North Carolina's request for FEMA relief from Hurricane Helene, calling it unwarranted. These people love you as long as they can use you for political advantage, and they could give a shit about you beyond that. And that's part of what's so horrible, seeing them doing this to this woman. They could give a damn about this woman. The fact that this verdict came down this week was a gift for them, given the news cycle, and they just jumped on the opportunity.
Yep, exactly. That's exactly it. And what makes it even more shameful is that what she's saying there, which is that we have to protect our children, she's speaking about an initiative and a policy that's overwhelmingly popular, which is apprehend violent criminals who are here illegally and deport them. Like the support for deporting violent criminals is overwhelming.
Sure.
Right? But you turn that policy, which is a popular policy, into something as horrible and as toxic as this by what? By abusing the policy, by not stopping there. And this is why I oppose mass deportations from jump, because I guaranteed you, I told everybody here on the show, there's many clips of me saying this, I guaranteed it was not going to stop at violent criminals. I guaranteed you the innocent people were going to be mixed up in this, or potentially innocent people. Let's say they bring back Abrego Garcia and they prove their case in court. Let them do that. Let them do that. But it was so obvious that they were going to implement that policy of deporting violent criminals in bad faith and go after people who were not violent criminals. That even though there is massive public support behind the policy that she is advocating for, Rachel Morin's mother there, she's being manipulated into advocating for something much darker and much worse, which is rounding up people who didn't do anything and condemning them to a life of torture and imprisonment. That's what's especially shameful about it. And from the administration's perspective, obviously, where you saw Carolyn Leavitt blur the lines between the convicted murderer who killed this poor woman's daughter and Abrego Garcia, who has not been accused, much less indicted or convicted of anything, it doesn't matter to them whether you're guilty or not guilty. I got into this on RBN last night. It really doesn't matter to them whether these immigrants are here legally or illegally. On Inauguration Day, there was a video that went viral of that woman crying because she was in line for her immigration appointment. I believe she was an asylum seeker. She had an asylum appointment booked through that app. And upon his inauguration, the app was shut down and she was turned away. Right? So that was a person who was coming legally through a port of entry to seek asylum status, going through the legal process, and she was turned away. Therefore, it does not matter to these people whether you're violent, nonviolent, legal, or illegal. They are using immigrants as the scapegoat they need to build a police state. Immigrants are the scapegoat they need to build a police state. You cannot garner popular support for a police state because no one really wants to live in a police state. You have to force people into that bargain by saying, we need the police state to protect you from this, or this group. And that group changes with the times. In the Bush years, the group was the Muslim terrorist. In the Biden years, the group was the white nationalist January 6th. Well, in the Trump too, it's the illegal immigrant gang member. They are the scapegoat that you need. It has nothing to do with people coming illegally, legally, violent, nonviolent. They don't even really care about immigration. They just need a group that they can turn the public against so that they can manufacture consent for an authoritarian police state. That is where their motivation begins and ends.
Look at the gay barber. He crossed the border for an immigration appointment. What's your logic in arresting the guy who you scheduled for an appointment? You know, Benjamin Franklin said it 200 years ago. He who would give up a little liberty for a little security deserves neither and will lose both. And that's exactly where we are.
Yep, 100%. Okay. All right. Where are we at here? Okay. Let's see. EO Shush, have you seen the Google satellite photos that appear that could possibly be blood and piles of bodies at Seacott? Yeah, that's what the other super.
I'm just hearing about this on the show.
Yeah, I have seen those photos on X. You know, I have to look into them more. A lot of stuff floats around X. There's a part of this next story that's floating around X too. That I can't verify because we're doing it in the middle of the show. How are there 740 in the Rumble audience and only 178 likes? Yeah, please smash that like button, everybody. Thank you. Thank you, Ken Tex. Again, appreciate the $10
You don't want the YouTube viewers to show you up, do you?
Yeah, exactly. Right. We're at 838 on YouTube. Can you catch them? We replaced the deep state for the German Third Reich. Right, misspelled on purpose because Rumble wouldn't process the other word. Thank you, EO Shush. Appreciate that. They don't let you say Reich on Rumble? I am surprised at that. I'm surprised 1775 coffee doesn't have a Reich blend. They don't even let you say the word? You think they'd have a problem?
Filtered with real Danube water.
Yeah, yeah, right, exactly. Exactly. Tenured village idiot outsourcing imprisonment to save money, lock innocents away in a proud American prison, providing American jobs with CCOT El Salvador is threatening Americans' position as land of the free. Yeah, 100%. 100% there, my friend. No doubt about that. All right, folks, I guess we got time for one more. We're going to do one more. We're running a little long today, but that's okay. Weekend is coming up, so we will go the extra mile for you all. Please smash that like button. Please smash that subscribe
This
button.
chair is tearing the ass out of me.
Yeah, well, we are almost done. But, hey, folks, we got one more for you. This kind of blew up online here. Lawyer, federal agents detain Guatemalan man 29 with no criminal record. Guatemalan immigrant with no Massachusetts criminal record was arrested Monday on Tallman Street after federal agents shattered the glass on his vehicle as he and his wife waited inside the car for their lawyer to arrive. This is from the New Bedford Lights in Massachusetts. Juan Francisco Mendez, 29, who was taken to an undisclosed location, has been in the United States for 2 years and was undocumented, but pursuing an adjustment of his immigration status, according to his attorney, Ondine Galvez. Mendez's wife, Mariu, a beneficiary of an asylum program, had petitioned for him so he could regularize his status. They are the parents of one child. Galvez and Mendez said Mendez has no criminal record. A name and date of birth search in the Massachusetts judicial system showed that Mendez has no criminal record in the state, according to a clerk at the New Bedford District Court. According to Mary Lou, the couple had just left their home when they noticed unfamiliar vehicles parked along their street. Despite this, they continued on their way until 3 cars blocked them in. Armed men wearing green bulletproof vests ordered them to get out of the vehicle, she said. In video shot by Mary Lou and shared with The Light, one of the agents demanded that they open the door. Mendez replied that he would comply once his lawyer arrived, who was already on her way to assist him. So here is video of this. This is pretty disturbing stuff. Not violent, not graphic, just some property damage here. But here we're going to see the video. Now, on X right now, there's some stuff circulating. Some views that have gotten, some tweets that have gotten a lot of views are alleging that the agent here is actually a private militiaman. I'm not going to say his name because we can't verify that. I can't report that unless I look into that. We have to see reporting on that. But so I know for people watching live or for people who are watching the clip, more might come out by the time this clip is published that verifies that. We just can't go with that based on a few tweets because we know that bullshit spreads fast on X, and so it would be irresponsible to just say that as fact. I'm saying that is out there. I won't say the name for reasons of not, you know, wrongfully smearing someone in that way. But what we can show you here is that these guys were not very nice, to put it mildly. So let's take a look at the video.
Golly.
I can't reach it. It's up by her. Here you go.
No esperaron a que la abogada se presentara, que llegara acá con nosotros y rompieron el vidrio.
Broke the window.
Y eso no, no, nosotros también
We have
tenemos
rights to
derecho
be here too.
de estar acá y entonces lo que hicieron fue
What they did
injustamente.
was
y
unfair.
se llevaron a mi esposo sin que la abogada esté presente.
Mi abogada viene en camino.
My lawyer is on her way. I want to talk, just talk. So they stopped him, they boxed him in, and he said, please wait for my lawyer to get here before we talk. And they ran out of patience, obviously.
Mi abogada, voy a hablar.
But I'll only speak once my lawyer arrives. They can't force the door. They can't break the glass. They can't do anything. We're recording them. Tell the lawyer to hurry. She says she'll be here in half an hour. Jesus fucking Christ. Man, please open the door. Ask if they have a
Usted tiene
warrant.
una orden
Do you
de
have an arrest
detención.
warrant? I mean, I don't even see a badge. I see a sign that says police.
Yeah.
I don't even see any official badge.
Pero, disculpe, tiene una
Excuse me,
orden.
do you have an arrest warrant?
Tienen una orden.
Do you have an arrest warrant?
¿Me puedo ir?
Can I leave? No.
Que si tienen una orden de detención.
What if you all have an arrest warrant? They're not responding.
No.
Lower the window to talk. I can open the door. Do you understand me?
Sí.
Do you want it hard or easy?
Sí. Pero cuando está presente
Yes,
mi
but when my lawyer
abogada.
is present.
Lo van a quebrar, dice. Ah,
They're
lo,
gonna break
lo van
it,
a
they say.
quebrar ya ahorita, dice.
Tells the lawyer they're going to break it.
Okay. Ok, voy a grabar video por si acaso sucede.
Record a video in case that happens. Okay, thank you.
Ah, bueno, que lo haga, Juan puta. Déjalo ahí.
I can't reach it, it's up by her. Here you go.
Nos sacaron forzadamente.
Forcibly removed
A
me and
mí
my
y a mi
husband.
esposo. No, me jalaron duro.
Pulled me out of the car violently.
Nos jalaron. Y a mi esposo también lo
Treated my
trataron.
husband
Lo
very
trataron
badly.
feo. Lo jalaron.
Treated me badly too.
Feo a él, a mí también.
Bueno, yo tengo que ver por mi
Now I have to
cliente,
figure out how
tengo
we'll
que
proceed
ver
with my
cómo
client.
hago, más que seguro.
This is the lawyer.
Lo van a poner en
Will most
un
likely be
proceso
placed before an
en frente de
immigration
la
court.
Corte de Inmigración. Van a tener que pagar
We'll have
fianza
to pay a
para
bond
que
in
le
order to
den
be
de alta.
released.
El señor va a pasar
We'll
unos
probably have
días
to
en
spend a few
la
days in
cárcel,
jail
por la manera brutal
because of the
en
brutal
cual
way they
ellos lo
treated him.
trataron. So, están actuando con impunidad.
Immigration agents
Y
are
saben
acting
que
with
ellos
complete
pueden
impunity.
hacer
They know
hasta
they can even
romper un
break a car
vidrio
window
mientras
while people are
personas
still
están dentro
inside.
del carro. Imagínate
Can
si
you
hubiese
imagine if
habido
there had been
niños
children in the
en el
car?
carro.
It's the most vulgar and brutal thing I've ever
Lo
seen.
más vulgar, lo más brutal. Me da vergüenza
I'm ashamed of what this country has become.
este país, lo que se ha convertido.
Got
Es
that
una
right.
pena.
It's truly a shame. Yep. And like I said, we don't. I don't know who those people were. They didn't have any badges present. Assuming they're agents and they know where this man is, we will have to wait and see. We're kind of hanging on those details now. Things are unknown, at least to my knowledge. Obviously, there's a possibility more has come to light since we started this stream, since we're 3.5 hours in, and this is a relatively new and developing story. But yeah, man, I mean, when you look at this guy, whoever he is, let's assume he's an agent. Let's assume he's legit. Let's assume he's not an imposter. I know there's some things going around on X right now which we cannot verify. But this is to the point that I showed this tweet, earlier in the stream in another segment. Yeah, the lesson of the Holocaust was not that the Nazis were uniquely evil. The lesson was that anyone could become a Nazi. You're witnessing this with America right now. Yep. That guy could be the guy standing behind you at the supermarket. These are just regular people. They're not all masterminds, This is what happens. And at the rank and file, you have massive numbers of people who support this. This guy was not accused of a crime. Again, and what did we say? We said before Trump was inaugurated, we say, yeah, mass deportations, because of the narrative which went totally uncontested by Kamala Harris and the Democrats during the campaign, was that there was this open border under Biden. Now, we've spoken to people who study this issue much closer than we do, and they say there wasn't an open border so much as there was just an overflow of people coming in. In other words, you still had checkpoints, you still had people getting harassed at the border, but it was just a matter of volume. I'll take their word for that. But whatever the case may be, the point is, no one on the Democratic side of the aisle even bothered to make the case for humane treatment of immigrants in the campaign. It was a race to the bottom. Kamala Harris put the images of the wall in her ads. It was accepted as a given that it should be open season on immigrants come 2025, no matter who won. Now, obviously, I'm not going to sit here and gaslight you and say that this would have been as bad under Kamala Harris as it is under Donald Trump. That's not the point. The point is, no one bothered to ask questions about, wait a minute, what can we not do to these people? Is it just going to be open season on these people? Like, no one bothered asking that question because people just took for granted, oh, well, the right thing to do is this. And I asked before Trump took office, okay, you take their word for it, for God knows what reason, you take their word for it that they're only going to be kicking in the doors or smashing the car windows of violent criminals. What happens when, as I fucking promised you, what happens when they take it beyond that? How are you going to feel about that? Well, now we're here, and now you have to ask yourself that question.
Yeah. Has anyone asked Dr. Phil what he thought about this?
Right.
Yeah. That is. I mean, there's no other word for it. It's fascism. Like, we're here. It's a fascist country now. Now you do have some people we saw before. I showed somebody who was actually commenting on the Abrego Garcia case, saying this isn't what he voted for, who was a Trump voter. Right. You know, there are some honest MAGA people who are honest constitutionalists who don't like what's going on. I think you have more people who, to the point of that last tweet, they're Nazis, man. They're Nazis. Like, most people will just go along to get along. And particularly, the more disenfranchised they are, the easier it is to suck them into this kind of a very cultish movement where really, there's a lot of debate about what is fascism. I wrote an article for Due Dissidents a few years ago about how the idea that the scapegoat has to be an ethnic scapegoat is a misunderstanding of fascism. At that point, you already had Donald Trump had made a lot of inroads with Latino communities and Black communities. That's no surprise. Like, the scapegoat doesn't have to be racially prescribed, but you need one. You need one because the fascism doesn't actually improve people's lives. So there has to be somebody to blame. You have to blame somebody for all the failures of the system and the administration. So there has to be a scapegoat, but it doesn't have to be white supremacist per se. It just has to be supremacist.
Right, exactly.
You take a bunch of people who, after deindustrialization, the decimation of factory towns, a lot of parts of this country, they look like some of the worst of what you would find in what you call the third world.
Oh, yeah.
You break people to that point, particularly in a country that has the empire virus, and it is kind of like a mental virus. If you go to countries that have never been empires, they're a lot more chill. They're a lot less silly. They're a lot less nationalistic. But we got the empire virus in our mind. You have a country like that where people feel broken and disenfranchised. You float, oh, we're going to return your past glory. And then you combine it with these people are to blame. And yeah, man, you got fascism. And we're seeing now, which, I mean, is no surprise to me, how many people will go along with it once you actually give it to them.
Right. Yep. Exactly. And that's why that tweet went as viral as it did, because it's absolutely true. It's absolutely true. You see how contagious it is.
Right.
It really is. It really is. And whose life is this making better? Who? You got to smash the window of this guy? What did he do? Who is he? Does he have a criminal? Is he a criminal? Is he a threat to anybody? Well, what did he do?
Right.
Yeah. No, it's amazing. It's amazing. And, another thing we said over and over again was that the entire case for their deportations is going to be paranoia, crime, and safety. There is no economic payoff. Your life is not going to be made any better because of any of this. Your quality of life is going to continue to deteriorate. And at what point do you realize that none of this has any impact on your life? Now, not to be confused with, and this is why I think the fact that they trotted out the mother of that murder victim was so especially shameful, because obviously removing gang members from society who are a threat to public safety, that's a goal that has, like I said, understandable, broad-based support. The rub was so obvious from the start, which is that was not their true agenda. That was not their true agenda. Their agenda went far beyond that. Far beyond that. They lured enough people to sleep with that. They shut this whole issue down as a campaign issue. They shut down the entire argument by saying, yeah, we're going to get the gang members. Okay, well, gang members are who we say you are. If you come from a certain country, you better not wear a certain hats or have certain tattoos or signal certain things, because we have a checklist, and if you check enough items on that list, we're just going to assume that you're a gang member, even though you've never been accused of anything at all, violence towards anybody, right? So, yeah, look, they took an issue where they had public sentiment on their side to do one thing, and they took it 1,000 steps further, as I knew they would. It was the most obvious thing in the world, because this is not about, once again, it's not about immigration even. It's not about border enforcement. It's about manufacturing consent for a police state. You need a scapegoat for that.
Right.
Immigrants were the convenient scapegoat this time because of the horrible mismanagement of the border by Joe Biden. Like I said in the few segments ago, one administration paves the way for the next. Bush to Obama, Obama to Trump, Trump to Biden, Biden to Trump again, and Trump to whatever comes next.
Yeah, and economically, the idea that people are going to benefit from removing millions of people from the country who actually, in spite of what you might have heard, pay taxes and spend money at businesses. You're going to be doing that at the same exact time that you're going to have mass business failures because of the tariffs. And you think this is going to improve your life? This is part of why they need a police state.
Yep.
Once people find out what this is about, they're going to be pretty pissed off, but it's going to be too late.
Yep. Indeed. Tenured village idiot thanks to the 199. Meet the new boss. Even worse than the old boss.
More, yeah.
Well, yes. Well, on this issue, that's what I mean. On this issue, it's pretty obvious that you wouldn't have these people kicking in fucking car doors under Kamala. Now, under Kamala, the issue of our time, Palestine, would have been just as bad on a longer timeline, which is why she was beyond the pale. So, you know, I'm not trying to go back and, you know, undo certain convictions. I'm just saying I'm just saying you can't gaslight people and say, oh no, this would have happened anyway, no matter who won. No, it wouldn't. No, it wouldn't have. That's not a serious point.
You know, at least with Kamala, we would have gotten Willie Brown planning the state dinners.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Exactly. No, but the reason I made that point was because obviously, you know, the Democrats punting on this issue is what gave permission to do this. That is a big part of what manufactured consent for this. The fact that there was no discussion of this issue at all in the campaign. The Democrats it was a race to the bottom. The Democrats were running as far to the right as they could on this issue.
Right.
That's what gives permission to do this. That's what manufactures consent.
And that's where we've talked about this. If elections are allowed to proceed in a free and fair way, such as we practice it here, and that's a big if at this point, the Democrats aren't going to undo most of this.
No.
They'll worst comes to worst, they'll have a rotating villain. They'll have a mansion that they can blame for why they can't fix it.
Right. Exactly. Otacon says, I like Star Wars for the extended universe, the video games in particular. If you want to see some S-tier camp, look up the live action cutscenes for Star Wars Jedi Knight on YouTube.
Listen, I read the entire expanded universe book series all the way to the end when Disney bought Lucasfilm and killed it off. So yeah, man, I mean, I like those. Those were interesting because with books, even like Star Wars books, they'll get deeper than they will in a TV show or a movie. So in the books, they did a lot of interesting things about like what the Force is philosophically. That's part of what I thought was so terrible about the movies making it midichlorians. Like in those books, the expanded universe books, they never mentioned that midichlorian shit. Like they talked about whether the dark side of the force was a concept rather than a reality, that it was a perspective, things that you would just never get in a movie because it was be too deep. That's what I'm saying. That's why I liked Andor, because it was like Star Wars for adults. That were like, I'm just saying, like, would I be watching like puppet Yoda kind of Star Wars at this point if that's what they were still making? I'd be excited for kids to be able to enjoy it. Like, that's what disappoints me about what they're doing now, because I feel like they ruined something that was very cool. That you know, I mean, for me growing up, it functioned the way mythology should. It taught me a lot of moral lessons. I think a lot of kids understood that idea of like anger is the dark side. You know, it communicated pretty important lessons. So I'm sad for kids, but I don't need those lessons at 55.
Right. Tenured Village Idiot says outsourcing imprisonment to save money, lock innocents away in a proud American prison, providing American jobs. That's right. With Sikhat, El Salvador is threatening America's position as the land of the free. Yes. What happened to keeping jobs here? Brent Yoendo says, if this is freedom, freedom blows. Thank you, Brent Yoendo. Victor Shakopoulos, Keaton, I wrote Muscolini. Please appreciate my comedic skills. Okay, my apologies. It's that Maloney seems to be a fan of both Musk and Mussolini. God, I hate explaining jokes. No, that's okay. I would have gotten it had I caught it. I missed it because I just read it as Mussolini. My apologies, Victor. Don't worry, it wasn't your fault. Ken Texican, cowardly self-serving governor servants can always be counted on to be quick to the trigger, shooting and or deporting the wrong guy, then lying about it. Pat Tillman might have said if he wasn't dead. Thank you for that, Ken Texican. Appreciate that. Otacon237 say, I see what you did there, Russ. The real consequences have not besent our economy yet. Hey, there you go. Good one, Otacon. Appreciate that very much. All right, what do we got here? We got Chase the Mind Sculptor. Appreciate that. Let's see. Here we go. Says, I'm not surprised the government is trafficking people to El Salvador for money. This is the corporate class for you. They see us as literal commodities to be bought and sold. Yep. I mean, Chris Holland said, he said, we're keeping them because they're paying us to keep them.
Right.
Yep. Absolutely. All right, folks, that is our show today. Long one, but a good one. Thanks very much for being here. We appreciate you all. We will be back Sunday night. That's right. Sunday, April 20th, I guess. That's Sunday. Easter Sunday. Special Easter show for you guys. Sunday
We're going to
evening.
smoke a big blunt.
Yeah, an Easter blunt. There you go.
This is, I think it's only every 1,728 years that Easter lands on 420 day.
On 420. There you go. Yes, exactly. Yes. Maybe Jesus will come back.
It's
Maybe
very
that's what he
rare.
was waiting for.
Going to come back with smoking a big spliff.
He is risen. Exactly. All right, folks. Well, that's our show. Appreciate you all very much. Thanks very much for being here. Smash that like button on the way out. Smash that subscribe button on YouTube. That follow button over on Rumble. And we will see you back here Sunday night, 7 p.m. Until then, thanks very much for spending the afternoon with us. Until we see you again, be safe and be well.
Courage!
Please clap.